Chapter 729. At this time, Li Yuan naturally had to change the topic. If she didn't change the topic now, there would really be no way to continue. Was there going to be an awkward silence? What could possibly happen to you? Grandpa Jun was not as polite to Li Yuan as he was to the three saints. His words were cold and sarcastic. He rubbed his hands together as if he was still reminiscing about that day when he gave Li Yuan 2 tight slaps. I heard that Princess Raimu was accidentally assassinated a few days ago and her life is in danger. She is currently recuperating in the Jun residence. Yuan would like to pay her a visit. After all, she is a childhood friend, and Princess Raimu is of such a high status, it would be inexcusable if I don't pay her a visit. What do you say, old man Jun? Li Yuan said humbly. That makes sense. Young Master Li can pay her a visit, but Princess Raimu is still unconscious. Young Master Li should not disturb her when you pay her a visit. Jun Zhantian thought for a moment and agreed straightforwardly. If even Raimu was not allowed to visit, then wouldn't it show that the Jun family was extremely guilty? Besides, that place seems to have been properly arranged, hehe. If that's the case, thank you, old man Jun. Li Yuan's eyes flashed as she thanked him respectfully. Jun Zhantian chuckled and called for old Pang to bring them to visit Princess Raimu. When Qi Tianfeng and the other two stood up, Jun Zhantian stood up to send them off. His words were filled with reluctance. But the three of them already felt extremely disgusted and did not want to stay a moment longer. That, it's not the right time, was too hurtful to their pride. We are saints. Motherfucker, not giving us any face at all. Even if they had to follow old Pang who was walking like a cat, it would still be better than following this old man Jun. Because at least old Pang did not know about this, the group of 5 headed towards the inner courtyard of the Jun residence with old Pang leading the way with his elegant cat-like steps. The 3 saints suppressed the urge to kill this guy and followed behind Li Yuan. Along the way, he was vigilant, but he did not bat an eyelid as he sized them up. Suddenly, the 3 of them noticed in unison that the further they went, the more unusual the air was. There was actually a warm and clear feeling, and there was even a faint breath of spring that assaulted their faces. It was warm and soft. The 3 of them became spirited, but they muttered in their hearts, "It can't be, right? Was he going to that person's place? Wasn't that sending a lamb to the tiger's den? Fuck." The further they went, the fresher and more pleasant the air became, and the 3 saints' expressions became more and more solemn. The Tianxiang city was located in the north, and although it was already the 2nd day of the 2nd month, the ice and snow outside still showed no signs of melting. However, the Jun family was a completely different world. Especially the further they went, the more harmonious the air of spring became. The willows on both sides of the road still looked soft at first, but after taking a few steps forward, the willows had already started to emit a faint green color. After taking a few more steps forward, he was even more shocked. Little green buds had actually started to emerge from the willows. Right in front of the road was Jun Moxie's small courtyard. After Jun Moxie left, Princess Raimu had been recuperating here. They walked to the front of the small courtyard and finally stopped. At this moment, the 3 saints were actually hesitating. 3 saints working together actually did not dare to go forward. This was an unimaginable thing. Because everything in front of them showed that the 9 serenities and 14 masters was in this small courtyard. The 2 willow trees at the entrance had already sprouted their branches and leaves, dancing in the wind. On the walls of the courtyard, countless green plants had already stretched out their tender green tentacles, completely covering the walls. Roses. There was a faint fragrance of fresh flowers coming from inside. The 3 of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Oh my God! On the day of harmony, daffodils were in full bloom. On the day of fluttering, roses covered the walls. This strange scene that existed purely in their imagination had actually appeared in front of them. This was a strange thing that no one could understand. The apricot rain that stained their clothes, the willow wind that did not chill their faces. Such a picturesque scene appeared in front of them, but it made the 3 saints feel a chill in their hearts. Their hearts were as cold as ice. Against the heavens. Yes, this was a heaven-defying method of creation. Since ancient times, they had never seen or heard of such a thing. There were two other small courtyards on both sides of the road. Although those two small courtyards were also lush with greenery, they were definitely not as special as the one in the middle. It was obviously due to the influence of the small courtyard in the middle. At this moment, the three saints were in a dilemma. The three of them clearly knew that this elegant, quiet, and cozy little courtyard was, in fact, the bloody mouth of a demon. As long as they went in today, their lives would no longer be in their control. They would directly become the target of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. To go in or not to go in? The three of them started to blame Li Yuran in their hearts at the same time. If I had suggested to leave just now, it would have been fine. At the very least, nothing would have happened. At most, I would have lost face. But, you're good. You just had to come and see that stupid princess. Now, you've really stepped into a trap. Looks like the lives of these 3 old men are going to be delivered to you today, you little brat. The frustration in the hearts of the 3 saints was really indescribable. Seeing that the 3 saints were hesitating at this moment, old Pang, who was leading the way, and Li Yuran, who was trailing behind, were a little surprised. They looked at the 3 of them. What was going on? Old Pang really did not understand. As the saying goes, an old man is a crafty horse. Old Pang had also sensed that the strength of these 3 people was unfathomable. He could not tell how strong they were, but they were stronger than anyone he had seen before. At the very least, they were stronger than Miss May. So, he had to be extra careful. As for Li Yuran, she was a little confused. With Grandpa Jun's character, since he had asked us to go in to visit, even if there was really a powerful expert here, he would not act rashly. You 3 are already saints, why are you still so timid? Can't you understand the ways of the world? Seeing this, the 3 of them smiled helplessly. Forget it. Since we are already here, if we don't go in and just leave, how would we have the face to establish our names in the pugilistic world? We would rather be beaten to death than be scared to death, right? With that thought in mind, the 3 of them stepped forward. However, each step was more cautious than the last. The 3 of them had a solemn expression on their faces. In fact, it was not that the 3 of them did not understand the ways of the world. It was just that the reputation of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was too illustrious. Moreover, this guy was too strange. He would not reason with you. If he did not like you, he would just attack you. 3 seniors, is there something wrong with this place? Li Yuran observed their expressions, and asked cautiously. Looking at the place again, there did not seem to be anything unusual. This was Jun Moxie's residence. This young master has been here before. And it seems that I have been here more than once. Could it be that my cultivation level is too low to detect the great danger here? Something wrong. Something's wrong. You are just an ignorant junior. How could you peep into such a great mystery between heaven and earth? The 3 saints snorted with sullen faces and ignored him, continuing to walk forward. Li Yuran knew that she was being snubbed. She rubbed her nose and followed them in. What a unique courtyard! Li Yuran exclaimed the moment she entered the courtyard. The courtyard was filled with lush greenery. Green leaves and red flowers complemented each other. It was actually a beautiful scene of blooming flowers. Whether it was winter plums, autumn chrysanthemums, spring orchids, or summer white lotuses, they were all graceful and swaying in the wind. Such a scene, if it was summer, autumn, or spring, would not be surprising at all. But the problem was, it was still winter. This was a little too inconceivable. However, Li Yuro's words caused the 3 saints' faces to tremble. Unique? If you see our corpses lying on the ground with our brains splattered all over, you will think it's even more unique. This is such a creepy and strange place, and you can still praise it with a face full of admiration. The danger is too great, you ignorant little idiot. At this moment, a strange voice said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Looking in the direction of the voice, they saw two children staring at them with cold eyes. Of the two children holding short swords, one had lost his left hand, and the other had lost his right hand. They were actually two handicapped children. Moreover, they were two handicapped children with mediocre aptitudes. But, although these two crippled children were young and their aptitudes were average, they gave off an icy cold murderous aura from head to toe. Damn it! As expected, a perverted place would have perverted people. These two handicapped children were actually born cold-blooded killers. Look at the ferocity and coldness in their eyes. It was as if they viewed human lives as worthless grass. How many people would they have to kill? Even a top general who had fought for many years and crawled out from mountains of corpses and seas of blood would not have such a strong murderous aura, right? We old men have lived for hundreds of years, but when it comes to the amount of blood we have on our hands, we might not even have as much as these two children. Looking at the short swords in the two children's hands, the three saints' hearts skipped a beat. The blades were long and narrow, sharp, and the color of blood was faintly discernible. They had obviously seen blood before, and they had definitely seen it many times. Only swords that had been nourished by human blood would have such a color. There was no blade, no tassel, and there should not be a scabbard. There were only two deep grooves of blood on the blade. These were obviously two swords that were meant to kill. And they were swords that could kill at any time. There was another point that made the three saints extremely surprised. These two children in front of them, other than being handicapped, their aptitudes were extremely mediocre. Even with the guidance of a master, it would be difficult for them to achieve anything great. Looking closely, these two children actually did not have a solid foundation from a young age, but had achieved their current earth Xian cultivation in a short period of time. This was enough to make countless people's jaws drop. Chapter 730. Today's sixth chapter. I'm vomiting blood. 6 chapters for 2 days in a row, and I've slept for less than 5 hours for 3 days and 2 nights. This double monthly vote is really... Boo-hoo. I beg for monthly votes. The answer was obvious, and there was no need to think about it. This must be the work of the hidden expert in the June residence. It seems like this person's method of creation is not only applicable to Xian beasts, but also to humans. It doesn't even care about the user's innate talent, it's a complete miracle. He believed that in time, these two crippled children would definitely grow into two cold-blooded killers that would shock the entire world. The three saints could foresee that even if these two little guys killed everyone in the world, they wouldn't be moved in the slightest. Natural killers. Natural cold-blooded. Damn it, where did these monsters come from? The three saints felt extremely powerless. Why are there so many strange things here? I haven't even seen that person in person, and I'm already depressed from the blow. And, two little brothers, we are here to visit Princess Ling Meng. Li Yuran put on a most amiable smile as he welcomed them and spoke in a gentle manner. Li Yuran didn't have the eyesight and knowledge of the three saints. Although she felt that these two children gave off an uncomfortable feeling, she didn't take it to heart at all. If these two children didn't belong to the June family, she probably wouldn't even pay attention to them. Li Yuran was still waiting for old Pang to introduce him to him, but when he turned around, he found that the guy had already slipped away with his cat-like steps. Li Yuran cursed a few times in his heart, but he had no choice but to personally show up. Visit Princess Raimu. Who are you? Why are you smiling so disgustingly? Are you sick? The voice came from the child on the left, but the tone was particularly strange, and a pair of eyes were like real blades shining on Li Yuran's face. At this moment, Li Yuran actually felt a stinging sensation in her eyes. Scary. But at the same time, the three saints discovered another inconceivable thing: this child did not use his mouth to speak. His mouth was still tightly shut, and he didn't move at all, but his voice came out just like that. Where did it come from? The three saints could also see this stomach. When he spoke, the clothes around his abdomen rose and fell slightly. It was obvious that the vibrations in his abdomen formed a specific tone that allowed him to speak. Holy sh*t. She was simply a demon. The three saints felt like they were about to collapse at this moment. Why did such a suspenseful thing happen again? This was too incomprehensible. Could it be that these two children were not only crippled, but also mute? Otherwise, why didn't he use his mouth to speak properly? Oh, my name is Li Yuran. Hee, you two little brothers, please let us pass. We are all good people. Li Yuran took out 2 gold ingots from her bosom and handed them over. The smile on his face became even more warm and gentle. So you are that hypocrite Li Yuran. The child looked disdainfully at the gold ingots in his hands and rolled his eyes. He continued to speak in that strange tone. We have long heard of you. You are a lecherous demon, and you do all kinds of evil. You bully men and women, deceive your superiors and subordinates, and you are also a hypocrite. When you smile at others, it is never a good thing. Why are you smiling at me? What are you trying to do? Li Yuran smiled bitterly. Damn it, when did brother's image become like this? Lecherous demon. Do all kinds of evil. The words you use seem to be used to describe your young master Jun Moxie. Why did you put them all on me? Although brother has done some bad things in his life, he did it behind others' backs. No one knew at all. Tian Can, what are you talking to them about? Let them go in to visit Sister Raimu. We will just watch from the side. Don't tell me there is someone in this world who can play tricks in front of us. The child on the right finally started to speak. He spoke without opening his mouth, and it was still that strange tone. And this kid was actually full of confidence. There was actually no one in this world who could play tricks in front of them. Two little fellows, why don't you speak with your mouths? Chi Tian Feng asked with a smile. Is it fun to speak with your stomachs? The two children looked at him disdainfully at the same time, as if they were looking at an idiot. They said at the same time, fun my ass. If we could speak with our mouths, why didn't we say it earlier? You are already so old, why are you still such an idiot? After saying that, the two children opened their mouths at the same time and closed them again. Their faces were full of disdain and disdain. The three saints laughed bitterly at the same time. At this moment, the three of them had already seen clearly, the tongues of these two children had long been cut off by someone. No wonder they were looking at them with such disdain, so that's why. In their eyes, they had indeed asked an extremely stupid question. Your young master is really ruthless, to actually cut off your tongues. Sa Qing Lu squinted his eyes and teased the two children. You are not allowed to scold our young master. The two children glared at him fiercely, like venomous snakes baring their fangs. What has it got to do with you who cut off our tongues? Aren't you here to see Sister Raimu? If you are still not going in, please leave. Li Yuran and the three saints laughed bitterly at the same time. Toward such strange children, there was really nothing they could do. The four of them entered the room, and Tian Can and DK also followed closely behind, looking at them as if they were thieves. Princess Raimu was lying in Jun Moxie's room, still unconscious. 3 or 4 maids were serving her in the room. A trace of pain flashed in Li Yuran's eyes as she walked over slowly. Just as she was about to take a closer look, a small figure flashed and Tian Can stood in front of her. He glared at her and said, "Look from here. Don't come any closer. Otherwise, I will kill you with my sword. Don't say that I didn't warn you." The sword flashed and Li Yuran felt a chill run down his spine. A narrow dagger had already been placed horizontally in front of him. Li Yuran suddenly felt his entire body explode, and his hair stand on end as he faced this small child in front of him. Although he was only facing a dagger that looked like a child's toy, Li Yuran suddenly felt his blood run cold. It was as if the person in front of him was not a 10-year-old child, but an extremely venomous snake. And this venomous snake was about to devour him. Li Yuran abruptly took 2 steps back. He strove to make his smile a little gentler and gentler. He softly said, "I just want to see if I can save your sister Ling Meng. I don't need your fake kindness." Sister Raimu is my young master's woman when she's alive and her ghost when she's dead. What has that got to do with you? Do I need you to put on an act? Tian Can glared at him. He really wanted to poke a bloody hole in this handsome face. Although his tone was strange, it was filled with determination and murderous intent. At this moment, Cui Chang he shook his head and gave Li Yuran a look. Li Yuran understood and waved his hand. Since that's the case, I'll take my leave. I'll come back another day to visit. There's no need, you don't need to come back for the rest of your life. If you appear in front of us again, it will be our swords that will greet you. This was said by the Colder de Quebec Li Yuran, and the three saints slowly walked out. He could hear Tian Can and DK conversing softly in their weird voices. What do they mean by visiting a patient? It's obvious that they're up to no good. That's right, they don't even know how to bring a gift to visit a patient. So rude, I can't even be bothered to look down on him, he doesn't even know how to act. This kind of person actually dares to call himself the #1 scholar in Tianxiang. I think he's the #1 vegetable seed, ho ho. That's right, he's not even as thoughtful as us. No wonder young master always says that this fellow only looks smart, but is actually a retard. We are at most crippled in our limbs, but he is crippled in his heart, even more crippled than us. Why are you spouting nonsense? Other than his limbs, what else can he compare to us? That's right, I was wrong. What right does he have to compare to us? Li Yuran almost spat out a mouthful of blood. She was a resourceful person. Who wouldn't be wary of her? Who would have thought that she would be looked down upon by these two kids from the June family, and in such a righteous and unbridled manner? At this moment, a voice shouted, Li Yuran, why did a pervert like you come out from there? Speak, what evil intentions do you have? It was Duga Xiaoyi, who had brought Little White, who was wagging its tail behind her. At this moment, her bright eyes were fiercely glaring at Li Yuran, as if she was looking at a complete pervert. Yuran is here to visit Her Royal Highness, Princess Raimu. Is there a problem? Li Yuran had come here to visit Princess Raimu, but he hadn't been able to achieve his objective. This was a matter that had been bothering him in his heart. When he heard Duga Xiaoyi's fierce questioning, he became even more unhappy. How am I a pervert? This young master Yuran had always been calm and collected. However, this was the first time in his life that he had become so fierce in front of a woman. Li Yuran was ruthless, cruel, and ruthless. He was willing to sacrifice anyone, including Princess Raimu, in times of need. However, it was undeniable that Princess Raimu was the woman he loved the most in his life. His heart was bleeding when he saw his beloved woman lying on the bed. However, he was told, Sister Raimu belongs to my young master when she is alive, and she belongs to my young master when she is dead. What does it have to do with you? This sentence was a huge blow to Li Yuran. It was a heavy blow to his soul. It almost made him, a shrewd young master Yuran, who never showed his emotions on his face, vomit blood on the spot. Which man in the world would not be moved when the woman he loved was called someone else's woman? It was already a good thing that he didn't fight for his life with a knife, therefore, Duga Xiaoyi's arrogant question ignited the fire in Li Yuran's heart. Visit Raimu? How can you look at Sister Raimu? Li Yuran, why are you pretending to be kind? Do you really think that no one in the world knows what you've done? Duga Xiaoyi was furious. As Princess Raimu's best sister, Duga Xiaoyi knew everything about Princess Raimu. Coupled with June Moxie's detailed explanation, Duga Xiaoyi's feelings towards Li Yuran had reached the extreme. At this moment, seeing that Li Yuran still dared to talk back, Duga Xiaoyi immediately became angry and shrieked angrily. Her visit was arranged by Grandpa June to provoke June Zhantian. At this moment, it was only logical for her to display her might. June Zhantian's arrangements were interlinked. Grandpa June was very confident that even if a deity came, this arrangement would achieve the desired effect. When Duga Xiaoyi jumped out, Grandpa June was in the study. He was stroking his beard and reading a book on the art of war with great interest. Li Yuran, you may be very intelligent, but you are still young. Playing tricks in front of me. Not to mention you, even your grandfather Li Shang, is too inexperienced. Chapter 731. No matter what I've done, Raimu is still the only woman that I, Li Yuran, have high hopes for. Li Yuran said calmly. She did not even take a step back. You still dare to say that? You're a shameless hypocrite. I'll kill you. Dugu Xiaoyi bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she roared angrily. Suddenly, she leaped up as if she was flying. Her slender figure drew a beautiful arc in the air. Suddenly, she waved her sleeves and a flash of saber light struck down like a bolt of lightning. The saber was like a bolt of lightning in the blue sky, yet also like a dream. It was ethereal yet real, beautiful yet filled with murderous intent. Heavenly Fragrance Saber's first move. Heavenly Fragrance Saber Technique. The first move, Heavenly Fragrance Saber Technique. Jun Moxie's direct disciple. A Chinese saber technique that transcended two worlds. When this magnificent blade appeared, the eyes of the three saints, who were as experienced as they were, suddenly revealed a sincere look of surprise. It was the first time in their lives that the three of them had seen such a magnificent, ethereal, yet powerful and wondrous saber technique. Li Yuran did not expect that this girl would actually dare to use her saber to kill someone. At that moment, she was in an extremely sorry state. She raised her head abruptly, a few strands of her hair were cut off by the wind and fluttered away. Dugu Xiaoyi's saber technique had taken the initiative and her momentum was like a rainbow. The second move, Heavenly Fragrance Saber, the third move, Heavenly Fragrance Saber. Following that, Heavenly Fragrance Saber Technique, Heavenly Fragrance Saber Technique. Followed by Heavenly Fragrance Saber Technique, Heavenly Fragrance Saber Technique, Heavenly Fragrance Saber Technique. It was endless and continuous. The three saints were dazzled by the scene and could not help but exclaim in admiration. Naturally, Dugu Xiaoyi's insignificant Xian Qi was not worthy of their attention. However, this girl's saber technique was too exquisite. The three of them could not wait to watch it for a while longer. From this girl's saber technique, the three of them felt that some of the essence of martial arts was about to be revealed, but they could not complete it no matter how hard they tried. It was obvious that this set of saber technique was far beyond their knowledge. Li Yuran, on the other hand, was in an extremely sorry state and was complaining incessantly. His original level of magic skill was much higher than that of Dugu Xiaoyi. However, during this period of time, Dugu Xiaoyi had been stuffing elixirs and elixirs into her mouth as if she was eating jelly beans. She had made great progress and was no weaker than Li Yuran. Moreover, she had such an ingenious bladesmanship to help her. Even though she was inexperienced, she was still able to handle the situation with ease. The little girl displayed everything she had learned and gained the upper hand. For a moment, she felt high-spirited. She had bullied people all her life, but she had never felt so satisfied. What's more, he was bullying someone he already hated. In the past, he wanted to bully someone but he couldn't beat him. But now... He. This feeling was simply too comfortable. Thus, he became even more ferocious and aggressive. Suddenly, with a shrill cry, Li Yuran stumbled backwards. Her legs went soft and she lost her composure, falling on her butt. Red Sleeve Dream Destroyer! Dugu Xiaoyi shouted. Her saber was like a bolt of lightning, slashing down on Li Yuran's head. Li Yuran only felt the cold wind from the saber. Her heart turned cold. Could it be that I, Li Yuran, am going to die here today? Suddenly, Qi Tianfeng moved. Just as the saber was a few inches away from Li Yuran's scalp, he had already caught the saber between his two fingers. With a little force, he snatched the saber away. Lowering his head, he sighed. What a good saber, good bladesmanship. Tossing the saber back to Dugu Xiaoyi, he said warmly, "Young lady, one should forgive people whenever possible. Always leave a way out, and it will be easier for us to meet again in the future." Then, he pulled Li Yuran up and said, "Let's go." Li Yuran was still in a state of shock. He had only walked out of the Jun family's main gate for a short while. When he came back to his senses, he realized that the three saints seemed to be behaving strangely. When they were about to exit the June residence, Chui Chang he had actually stepped on a brick. Looking at the clothes of the three, even in such cold weather, their backs were all wet. What was going on? That was close. Chi Tianfeng let out a long sigh and groaned. This saint expert couldn't help but raise his hand and wipe the cold sweat off his face. Close? Li Yuran asked in surprise. How was it close? Why didn't I feel anything at all? Could it be that he was sighing at me just now? That shouldn't be the case, right? With the strength of the three saints, even if the little lass's strength was beyond my expectations, there shouldn't be any danger. That was really close. Sa Qing Lu sighed with lingering fear in his heart. He glared at Li Yuran hatefully and said unhappily, "These 3 lives of ours were almost buried in your hands, brat. Yet you're still here clueless." Ah! Li Yuran was genuinely shocked at this moment. If I'm not wrong, that mysterious master of June Moxie is in that small courtyard we just entered. Chui Changhe stretched out his fingers and rubbed his temples, sighing, "It's really unexpected. Did you not realize that in that small courtyard, there was nothing that wasn't inconceivable? There was nothing that wasn't unheard of. Whether it was an object or a person. As expected." Chi Tianfeng looked up at the sky and exhaled deeply after a long time. Only now did the 3 of them feel a lot more relaxed. At the side, Li Yuran felt as if she was listening to a heavenly book. She didn't understand what these 3 old fellows were talking about at all. Even if there were things that were out of season in that small courtyard, it shouldn't be this shocking, right? When the sun is in full bloom, the daffodils bloom. When the wind blows, the roses fill the walls. This is the first anomaly. In the eyes of ordinary people, this kind of anomaly is just a miraculous sight. But in our eyes, it's heaven-defying. This kind of anomaly is no different from the frost of June and the thunder of winter. Chi Tianfeng raised a finger and said solemnly. The mouth cannot speak, but the belly speaks. This is the second anomaly. Sa Qing Lu continued. This is also an extremely inconceivable thing. In the tens of thousands of years of the Xian continent, such a strange thing has never happened before. Such a strange skill. The third is that Princess Raimu who is lying on the bed. Chui Chang he sighed. It's not that she can't wake up, but that someone is intentionally keeping her from waking up. This person used extremely exquisite methods to control her body, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. He even controlled some of the most minute parts of her body. This old man prides himself on his unparalleled medical skills, but in this kind of situation, I'm also helpless. Because, as long as some abnormal Xian Qi is channeled, this little girl's body will suffer damage that will never recover. Also, that little girl's exquisite knife skills have never appeared in this world before. If not for that little girl's cultivation being too weak, if the person using the knife skills had the cultivation of a first-level venerable, even we might not be able to save her so easily. And that 8th-level peak iron-winged leopard cub. This is even more impossible, but it's happening one after another in front of us. After the 3 saints finished talking about these anomalies, they looked at each other and saw the complicated expressions in each other's eyes. Ah! Li Yuran was truly astonished and shocked. He had never imagined that the strange things he had seen along the way would actually contain so many mysteries. One must know that although Li Yuran was extremely intelligent, had a unique vision, could see through everything, and could even strategize strategies to win a battle from 1,000 miles away. She was also smooth and slick in dealing with people. But he also had his weakness, and it was a fatal weakness. That was, his Xian Qi level was really not high. This severely limited his horizons. Just like the things that the saints before him could detect, but he did not notice at all. Even if he saw it with his own eyes, he would not be able to detect it. However, although the saints could see so much, they were really just scaring themselves. Although Li Yuran did not know anything, he was more at ease than them. This was also a kind of blessing, Ignorance is bliss. Let's go. We need to reevaluate the matter of targeting the June family. When we go back, immediately contact the illusory Blood Sea and the 6 saints from Hermitage. We need to meet and discuss the countermeasures. The situation before us is far more serious than what we initially predicted. Chi Tianfeng turned around and looked at the dense spiritual chi lingering in the sky above the June family. He sighed deeply and said weakly, before coming, this old man had already predicted that the situation this time would be very dangerous. But I did not expect it to be this dangerous. Right now, this old man can basically confirm that the unparalleled expert hiding in the June family is definitely that person. Sa Qinglu trembled slightly and said at the same time as Cui Changhe, 9 serenities and 14 masters. Is this 9 serenities and 14 masters very powerful? Li Yuran was a little puzzled. Could it be that he's even more than the saints? He stopped here, as if saying this would hurt his pride. Saints? Chi Tianfeng laughed coldly and said, even if they're saints, what are they in the hands of the 9 serenities and 14 masters? In the Supreme Golden City, there were 2 disabled saints. One had a large hole in his chest, and the other had half of his head shot off. Although he survived with his exquisite Xian skills and tenacious life force, it's been a few hundred years, and he's still unable to recover. Cui Chang he let out a long sigh and said solemnly, when one reaches the level of a saint, as long as they don't die on the spot and have their body and spirit destroyed, they can regrow their limbs. But none of the saints who were injured by the 9 nether 14th young master managed to recover, 9 serenities and 14 masters. Li Yuran gasped and said this name. Her heart was filled with shock. To think that there was such a terrifying existence in this world. The 4 of them walked back in silence. Chi Tianfeng only gave a single order, tonight, the 9 saints must gather and meet. If this matter was not discussed properly, the entire Tianxiang city, including the surrounding 1,000 miles, would be reduced to ruins. It would be fine if it was just one place, but the real concern was whether the 9 of them would have any chance of winning if they made a move. There was the danger of being overturned at every turn. They must not act rashly. On the other side, Jun Moxie was somewhere on the snowy peak, his heart burning with anxiety. He watched as the people of Blizzard Silver City worked hard to rebuild the city and clean up the ruins, but Han Feng Shui was nowhere to be seen. And he was being held back by Shui Shuangqing, asking him all sorts of questions. She was almost as attentive as his own mother. Jun Dashao was getting a little impatient. I'm already a level 2 venerable now, and I'm immune to cold and heat. How can I still catch a cold? Finally, Han Zhanmeng couldn't stand it anymore and asked Shui Shuangqing to prepare dinner. Jun Imo Xia heaved a sigh of relief. He snuck out sneakily, and when he saw that no one was paying attention, he disappeared in a flash. Chapter 732. Today's second update. Third update, seeking monthly votes. Seeking minimum monthly votes. The yin-yang escape and the power of earth were both activated at the same time. In the blink of an eye, Jun Moxie had already descended to the depths of the ground. And this location happened to be the core of the Blizzard Silver City's main hull. Previously, the mysterious energy that Jun Moxie had felt was emitted from here. Sure enough, the moment he entered the ground, Jun Imo Xia could feel the Hongjun Pagoda in his mind spinning at high speed with a loud boom, bringing with it a strong sense of excitement. Moreover, the sticky feeling that he had felt before had once again become stronger. It was as if the entire underground was a huge swamp, and he was trapped in it, struggling to move forward. You're excited, but you can't just be excited. This is underground. Don't you know how much spiritual energy is needed to use the yin-yang escape and the power of earth at the same time? Moreover, every step needs to break through this unimaginably sticky resistance. If you don't put in any effort, how can I withstand it by myself? Big brother, are you trying to kill me? Jun Moxie complained in his mind. This was not an alarmist talk. Without the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Dashao would not be able to maintain this for too long with his own strength. Once his strength was overdrawn, no matter how mysterious the yin-yang escape and the power of earth were, they would lose their effectiveness without the support of spiritual energy. Then, a certain someone would die, but the Hongjun pagoda still did not have the slightest movement. It continued to spin rapidly, excitedly anticipating, but did not show any signs of opening the door to release spiritual energy. Looks like this guy still hasn't digested his food yet. Jun Moxie sighed sadly. What a wretched life. Looks like I have to rely on myself and work hard to save all my resources. Hopefully, I can make it to the destination. But the most depressing thing was that, this business seemed to be for the Hongjun pagoda. It was hard to say how many benefits he would be able to reap from it. This made young Master Jun feel very unbalanced. With the mentality of not wasting anything, Jun Moxie only probed one step in each of the 4 directions. Then, he made a decision: drill towards the northwest. This was because that direction was the most difficult to break through among the 4 directions, and the degree of stickiness was even more obvious. If there was really something good in this place, it must be there. There's nothing to say. I'm going all out. It was either succeed or die trying. Jun Mo Xia took a deep breath, and his whole body suddenly spun in the soil layer. The more he spun, the faster he spun, and gradually formed a whirlwind. Just as the rotation reached its peak speed, his body suddenly tilted, and he actually landed horizontally in the soil layer. Then, he ferociously kicked the soil layer behind him, and his whole body flew out like an arrow that had been released from a bow with a whoosh. At this moment, the front of Jun Dashao's head was like a drill that was rotating at a high speed. This was also what Jun Moxie had thought of. It was the easiest way to save energy at the beginning. This leap covered a distance of more than 100 feet. Jun Moxie only felt that his scalp was burning because of the high-speed friction, and his scalp already had a bad feeling like it was being roasted on a volcano. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "Damn, this brother's beautiful hair won't be ruined just like this, right? That's too heartbreaking. Although my hair is a little longer now, and it's a little troublesome, if I become bald, that's too unsightly." The spinning gradually weakened, and finally stopped. Jun Moxie turned around and stood still again. The first thing he did was to touch his head. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Well, it's still hair, but it was a little curly from the friction of this sudden heat. This is a new discovery. I wonder if I can use this method to derive the perm technique. At the same time, Jun Moxie calculated the distance and couldn't help but secretly smack his tongue. With this kind of momentum, if he was in the air, he would probably be able to rush out at least a distance of more than 1,000 feet. But in this underground place, he only drilled out a small distance of 12 to 30 feet. Moreover, where he was now, the sticky energy was even thicker, and the resistance was even greater. It was like a huge cocoon, tightly binding him inside, and he actually had a feeling that it was extremely difficult to move his fingers. Jun Moxie tried to use his chi to absorb the wandering energy in this place, but he found that he couldn't absorb it at all. It seemed that this resistance was not the ordinary condensation of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but a mysterious force that he didn't know about. There's no other way, I'll continue to drill. Jun Moxie also exerted his strength. I don't believe that I can't drill through. I've never believed in heresy. I'll fight it out with you. Once again using the mysterious art of unlocking heaven's fortune, Jun Moxie closed his mouth and gritted his teeth. Step by step, inch by inch, he squeezed through. After a long time, Jun Moxie no longer cared about his elegant posture, and sat down on the ground, panting heavily. His forehead was dripping with hot sweat, and white steam filled the air, which was instantly absorbed by the earth. This is too difficult. Jun Dashao was simply helpless. At the beginning, he could still take big steps forward, and although the resistance was a little strong, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't move forward at all. But at this point, it had directly shortened to moving inch by inch. Moving was moving, but there was also a strong rebounding force here. If he didn't immediately use the 1,000 catty fall to stabilize his body, he would be sent flying by that rebounding force for almost an inch. If it wasn't for Jun Moxie's extraordinary reaction speed, he was afraid that he would have been bounced back countless times. then there was no need for him to make any more plans today. Right now, he was really a little exhausted. Even with his current strength of a second-level venerable, coupled with the abnormal effects of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, the yin-yang escape art, and the force of earth, he was only able to advance less than 500 feet in such a long period of time. Adding the 120 feet that he had spun out at the beginning, it was at most a distance of about 600 feet. In layman's terms, it was 180 meters. Right now, Jun Moxie could faintly feel that he shouldn't be far from the core of this strange force. A conservative estimate would be a few dozen feet. But this few dozen feet was as far as 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers. It was truly so close yet so far. Sticky, binding, rebounding, and even an inexplicable rotational force as he moved forward. Some rotated with the flow, some rotated against the flow. No matter how it rotated, it was the kind of force that made people involuntarily lose their balance. Jun Moxie was completely sure that if it wasn't for his yin-yang escape and power of earth, if an ordinary person came here, even if it was a Saint King, they would definitely not be able to take a step forward. This kind of force was really too strange. But at the same time, Jun Moxie also thought of another point. Since there was such a strange and powerful force guarding this place, then what kind of heaven-defying thing was inside? Thinking about it from another perspective, this was actually logical. If it wasn't a powerful and extremely precious thing, why would the Hongjun Pagoda be so desperate? With the Hongjun Pagoda's pickiness, how could something that it desired so much be ordinary? After resting for a while, Jun Moxie finally began his next effort. Now that he had temporarily lost the powerful replenishment of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie could only desperately revolve the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. He could even feel the whooshing sounds of the spiritual energy flowing through his meridians. This feeling was really great. But with Jun Moxie gone, Eagle King, Xue Shuangqing, and the rest were anxious. Xue Shuangqing was puzzled. Where did my future son-in-law go? What should I do? I still have questions to ask. Eagle King was even more anxious. Brother-in-law is gone. Where did he go? I thought that I would be able to get some benefits by following brother-in-law alone, and that I would be able to enjoy everything for myself. Who would have thought that brother-in-law would suddenly disappear after just half a day? What should I do? Jun Moxie had disappeared for 3 days straight. Only Han Zhanmeng, the lord of the city, was more cautious. Could it be that this elusive guy had found out where the biggest secret of the Silver Blizzard City was? Although he knew that it was impossible, he still sneaked in a few times to take a look. There was still only his father, Han Fengshui, inside, and nothing out of the ordinary. Looking at his father's shocked expression, Han Zhanmeng was relieved, but he couldn't help but wonder, where did this kid go? There doesn't seem to be anything else in the Silver Blizzard City that he would be interested in, right? No one could have imagined that Jun Moxie had been fighting that strange and mysterious force underground for 3 days. 3 whole days. As the last day passed, Jun Moxie was like a catfish that had been thrown ashore for half a day. He was completely exhausted, but he was finally sure that he was less than half a meter away from breaking through this damned force. And right now, that strange rebound force seemed to be extremely strong. Jun Moxie did not dare to move even a single step, and only inched forward bit by bit. His whole body moved at the same time, almost as if he was breaking through a millimeter at a time. The Hongjun Pagoda's inaction had made Jun Dashao suffer a lot. Although he was in the state of yin-yang escape, Jun Moxie could clearly feel that there were still many places on his body that were broken. He used the divine sword to cut through that strange force bit by bit, and then squeezed his body into the tiny gap that had been cut out. Oh heavens, oh earth, oh my God. Jun Dashao wanted to cry but had no tears. He did not want to experience such a feeling a second time in his life. Finally. Chapter 733. Yes, it was expelled. Like a person who had eaten something bad and couldn't wait to expel the foul-smelling stuff from his body. With a swoosh, it shot out. Jun Mo Xia was completely unprepared and was sucked in. There was only one feeling, and the only thing left was his vision going blurry. Then his body, which was still in a state of concealment, slammed into the stone wall just like that. It was a solid impact, too solid impact. Pfft. Oh my mother, Jun Dashao couldn't help but howl in pain. He felt hundreds of muscles, hundreds of bones and dozens of tendons in his body all emitting excruciating pain at the same time. After a long time, he finally came to his senses. Gritting his teeth and opening his eyes, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This place was so fucking beautiful. The place that he had followed that strange airflow to was an unusually huge underground palace. It covered an area of at least 100 feet, and the height could be more than 100 feet. Looking around, it was a dazzling array of things. There were only things that one could not imagine, and there was nothing that could not be found here. Yes, everyone had not seen wrongly. The place that Jun Moxie had come from was not the same place as the secret chamber that Han Feng Shui had stayed in. Or rather, the secret chamber that Han Feng Shui had come from was above this palace, and the palace that Jun Moxie had come from was below. As for how high the distance between them was, it seemed like it had not been measured, but what had truly attracted Jun Moxie's attention were the 14 large words in the middle. 14 domineering words with the words "I am the only one in the world." It was engraved on the stone wall in front of him. These 14 big words had the same color as the stone wall. It should not have been easy to distinguish them, but in this place, they were exceptionally eye-catching. As soon as anyone entered this place, they would naturally notice these words. It was as if these 14 big words had the life and soul of a human, arrogant, domineering and insufferably arrogant. It was as if they were about to fly out of the stone wall and soar into the sky. Unparalleled since ancient times, the 9 Nether First Young Master. It was actually the words left behind by the #1 lunatic in history. Even someone as arrogant as Jun Dashao was deeply shocked by these words. Inexplicably, he felt a little envious. Damn it, look at how he's living, look at how he's doing. Looking at himself, it was simply incomparable. How did the old saying go? Comparing oneself to others was like comparing oneself to someone else. Jun Moxie dispelled the yin-yang escape and retracted the power of earth. Then, he stood up and patted the dust off his body. This was really strange. He was clearly using the yin-yang escape just now and was in the void state. Where did all the dust come from? Forget it, I'm not going to think about those things that I don't understand anymore. With his hands behind his back, he strolled around like a king inspecting his own territory. So what if your weird power is awesome? Now, this entire place belonged to the Jun family. Jun Moxie smiled mischievously. He was about to inspect the results of his work. Suddenly, the stone wall in front of him that had been engraved with those words flashed. Then, a scroll dropped down from above with a shwat sound. With a pa sound, it landed right in front of him. The material of this scroll was neither gold nor jade. It was exceptionally soft. After it landed on the ground, it opened up automatically. The first 5 words were like 5 bolts of lightning, striking Jun Moxie's soul at the same time, penetrating deep into his soul. Jun Xia, you're here. Jun Moxie's body trembled, and he felt all the blood in his body rush to his head in an instant. With a "wang" sound, he saw stars before his eyes. He panted heavily, as if he was about to suffocate. The shock in his heart was as if his soul was about to be completely shattered. It was obvious that this was the handwriting of the 9 Nether First Young Master. And he wrote, Jun Xia, you're here. And not Jun Moxie, you're here. The difference of a single word was like the difference between heaven and earth. Jun Xia was someone who belonged to his previous life. In this world that belonged to Jun Moxie, no one would ever know this name. If it was read forward, it was his real name. If it was read backwards, it was his nickname. Jun Xia. Evil Monarch. But how did this legend from 10,000 years ago, the 9 Nether First Young Master, know his name? And it was the name from his previous life? A huge mystery suddenly appeared in Jun Moxie's heart. Tianxiang City, second prince's residence, secret chamber. 12 people, separated into 3 directions. All of their faces were exceptionally solemn and gloomy, as if a storm was brewing. As the owner of this place, the second prince, Yang Dan, was not present. Because he did not have the qualifications to participate in such a high-level meeting. Or it could be said that among the 12 people here, apart from Li Yuran, any one of them had the ability to overturn the entire Tianxiang city. That's about the general situation. Qi Tianfeng's face was solemn as he said slowly. So the 3 of us did not dare to make any rash moves and returned immediately to discuss this matter with everyone. We still need everyone to come to a decision. Our opinion is that we should not act rashly. After all, that person's strength is too terrifying. Not to mention his battle prowess, just the techniques that we've witnessed today are already far beyond our knowledge. If there's any change, we'll be in danger of being overturned. The war for seizing the heavens is just around the corner, and if we start a war rashly, no matter what the outcome is, the future will be uncertain. Li Yuran, Qi Tianfeng, and the other 2 occupied the 4 seats on the east side. Qi Tianfeng was currently reporting on his trip to the Jun family, and it had already come to an end. Among the 4 on the north side, there were 2 old men dressed in white. They had white hair, white eyebrows, and white beards, looking very simple and unadorned. Their expressions were rather calm, and although they were old, their spirits were hale and hearty. Beside them were 2 white-clothed middle-aged men. They wore light coats and had gentle expressions on their faces. These 4 people were from the elusive world of immortals. And on the south side were the people from the illusory blood sea. Zi Jinghong sat at the last seat, and beside her were 3 elegant middle-aged men dressed in purple robes. After hearing Qi Tianfeng's description, one of the 2 old men furrowed his brows and said thoughtfully, "From what Brother Qi has said, it looks like the 9 serenities and 14 masters might really be inside." But wasn't the 9 serenities and 14 masters sealed in the Tianfa forest? Why would they suddenly appear here? This old man is also unable to make up his mind because of this. Whether the 9 serenities and 14 masters is inside or not. But judging from the few clues that we have, there might not be anyone else in this world who can do it. At least, as far as this old man knows, there really isn't anyone who can. Qi Tianfeng said hesitantly. To forcefully change the root bone of a second-rate profound beast that can only reach the peak of the 7th level and cause it to undergo an extreme transformation, besides requiring great divine ability, I believe that it would consume an immeasurable amount of cultivation strength. In this old man's opinion, such an act is simply a waste of a heavenly treasure. Unless one is extremely bored and has nothing else to do, only then would they do such a thing. The old man in white slowly stood up and paced with his hands behind his back, his brows furrowed. The 9 serenities and 14 masters undoubtedly has this ability. If he had nothing to do in the seal and was extremely bored, it would be reasonable for him to create such a mystical Shen beast. But there are countless strange people in the continent, and the 9 serenities and 14 masters might not be the only one who is so bored. We have all experienced the long years. Let me ask all of you, how many people can endure the endless boredom of cultivation? He didn't say it too clearly, but the meaning behind his words was very clear. Everyone present couldn't help but nod their heads, feeling the same way. At such a high level as a saint, having a lot of people was no longer a means of relieving loneliness, but a serious form of disturbance. He had to quietly figure out the mysteries of heaven and earth by himself, and only seek that sudden flash of inspiration could allow him to make further breakthroughs. This required silence, and only silence. But man was a social animal deep down in his bones. Living alone for a long period of time, that kind of loneliness was enough to drive even the most cultured person crazy. And at times like this, they needed to find something to pass the time, so basically everyone would grow flowers, plant spirit herbs, and so on to relieve their loneliness. Firstly, it was to relieve their loneliness, so that they could have something else to do. Secondly, they could also borrow the qi of the spirit seedlings and spirit trees to attract more spiritual qi from heaven and earth. Thirdly, after a long period of time, it would also be a huge fortune for the later generations. So the cultivation of the people from the three holy lands was generally very fast because of this reason. Secondly, during the period of Yang Union, when the daffodils are in full bloom, when the flute is fluttering, the walls are full of roses. From what I know, this kind of reversal of time and space is not something that can be achieved by a human. If it's just one person. Everyone, even the heaven-defying Nine-Nether First Young Master from 10,000 years ago might not be able to do it. If we determine that the person here is the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters based on this, then we're overestimating the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters too much. He might not even have the ability to do it. The white-robed old man gently rubbed the space between his brows, then waved his hand slightly. Emphasizing his tone, he continued, although it's impossible to achieve this kind of effect with human strength, it's not impossible if there's sufficient material support. As he said this, the faces of the 10 over people instantly revealed a look of realization. Everyone here is a person with broad horizons. I only need to mention a few things, and everyone will understand. Although they are rare, they are not hard to find. For example, the exquisite jade heart that has been warm for 10,000 years, the heaven and earth spiritual vein, the jade vein hot spring. These kinds of heaven and earth spiritual treasures only need to be buried deep in the ground to cause this kind of phenomenon that goes against the seasons. So, this aspect can also be excluded. At least, it cannot be used as a basis to determine that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters is here. Chapter 734. 4,000 words. 4,000 words. The white-robed old man smiled and said confidently, "You must know that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters and the 9 Nether First Young Master came from the same place. So, we can deduce that whatever the 9 Nether First Young Master doesn't have, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters should also not have. And in our Xian continent, for thousands of years, it has always been the 9 Nether First Young Master's skills. So, the matter of the mute speaking is strange, but it does not mean that it is the 9 Nether First Young Master's skills." This statement made a lot of sense. Everyone nodded silently, feeling that the pressure in their hearts had lessened a little. And the restriction on the little girl's body. I think it should be some kind of method. Although it is extremely brilliant, it may not be some kind of Xian skill. After all, there are too many things in this world that we don't understand. For example, although our cultivation has reached the saint level, but as you all know, we may not be able to understand a lot of the various restrictions. Moreover, every restriction is different, and they are all unique skills. Others can't break them. This seems not surprising. Finally, it's the little girl's knife skills. It's the same logic as the mute speaking. So, this old man speculates that there is an expert in the June family. There is no doubt about this. But it is definitely not the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Although this expert's strength is also rather strong, he still cannot be compared to the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. The white-robed old man finally used a tough tone to refute Qi Tianfeng's speculation. And the most important point. A middle-aged man in a purple robe muttered to himself and continued, "Since ancient times, wherever the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters appear, there will be an inexplicable eerie aura. And as long as this strange aura appears, everything will not be able to grow. This is also the reason why the seniors who were injured by the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters could not recover. So, the lush flowers and plants in the courtyard are the biggest reason why the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters don't exist there. Also, Brother Qi, you guys probably didn't feel that kind of gloominess, right?" Qi Tianfeng nodded, but in his heart, he was very dissatisfied with their deductions. Since cultivation methods could be created, couldn't one's aura be changed? This was not a difficult task for a true expert at the pinnacle of power. Besides, other than a lunatic like the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, where else could there be such a lunatic in this world? The only reason you guys are denying me like this is because you subconsciously do not wish to face the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. How could this old man be willing to face him? A normal person, even a saint king, would not be willing to face that madman. But if the timidity in your subconscious affects your judgment, then it will be even more fatal. Both of your deductions are very reasonable, but this matter still needs further consideration. I am not stubbornly insisting that the person inside is the 9 serenities and 14 masters. But we have to be careful. Caution is the parent of safety. When we entered the courtyard during the day, although we did not feel any gloomy or frightening aura, we still felt a chill in our hearts. This feeling is real. Qi Tianfeng looked at his 2 sworn brothers. Sa Qinglu and Cui Chang. He nodded at the same time, confirming that he was speaking the truth. Brother Qi, this might just be a moment of guilt. How can it become the basis to judge the 9 serenities and 14 masters? The purple-robed man laughed, his words filled with sarcasm. Miao Wu Ji. What do you mean by that? If you really don't have a guilty conscience, then why do you deny that the person we're facing is the 9 serenities and 14 masters? Qi Tianfeng said angrily. At least this old man has the courage to face such a cruel outcome. And you, what right do you have to say that I have a guilty conscience? The purple-robed man, Miao Wu Ji, smiled warmly and said, whether one is guilty or not is not something that can be explained by the volume of one's voice. Brother Qi, please don't be impatient. There will always be evidence. Then this old man will wait and see. Qi Tianfeng took in a deep breath, his eyes as sharp as knives as he glanced at Miao Wu Ji before sitting down resentfully. The two of them had not liked each other for 300 to 400 years, and they were still brooding over it. The white-robed old man furrowed his brows slightly and said, there's no need for everyone to argue. Brother Qi and the rest have gained a lot from this trip. At least there's one thing that we can be sure of. Whether that person in the Jun family is the 14th young master or not, he's definitely a world-shaking character. There is no doubt about this. We must not underestimate the enemy. Furthermore, we must not act rashly in Tianxiang City. He smiled, but his complexion was serious. Everyone understands that if we were to display our full strength, then I'm afraid that the Tianxiang City will be destroyed in a single day. And the population here is so densely packed, it's really against the will of the heavens. Furthermore, the Misty Mansion will definitely intervene. The best way is to lure that person out and annihilate him. That's right. Brother Chen, what do you think? Miao Wu Ji nodded. The white-robed old man who spoke was called Chen Chong. His name was extremely tacky, but he was the only second-level saint among the 9 saints. Furthermore, he was a meticulous and resourceful person, so he naturally became the leader of this alliance. If we can kidnap an important person from the Jun family, it will definitely not be too difficult for everyone here. Although this method is a little despicable, it is the simplest way. Chen Chong narrowed his eyes and said slowly. This plan might not be appropriate. No one had expected that the person who spoke out against this plan would be Li Yuran, the person everyone thought was not qualified to participate in this meeting. The moment he opened his mouth, everyone turned to look at him. A small Jade Xian expert is just like an ant in a group of saints discussion. So, it's a blessing that you've cultivated for several lifetimes to be able to participate in this meeting. But, you don't want to stay put. Instead, you suddenly say that this plan might be inappropriate. This was a little comical, and to put it more seriously, it could even be said to be impudent. What's wrong with this plan? Chen Chong smiled slightly, not offended in the slightest as he asked warmly. Li Yuran didn't know why he would actually speak out against it. It was just that after hearing that suggestion, he had spoken out without thinking, as if it was only natural. Even Li Yuran was shocked when he said that. It was as if he subconsciously did not want the Jun family to be destroyed. Did he not want Jun Moxie to die? Actually, Li Yuran's current state of mind was very strange, so strange that even he could not understand it. Jun Moxie, even if you lose, you will lose because of my plan. Although your current strength is already beyond my reach, if I let you be defeated by my schemes, then it will still be my victory. This was the mentality of an opponent that the two of them had been fighting for a long time. It was as if Li Yuan had already decided, in this world, only you are worthy to be my opponent. Also, Jun Moxie and Li Yuan were about the same age, but Jun Moxie had already become an existence that most people in this world had to look up to. This was as if he had set a goal for Li Yuan to chase after. Catch up, surpass, and then trample him to death. But if I can't catch up for now, I will not allow others to destroy him. Instead, I will protect him. This was a strange mentality. In fact, in his heart, Li Yuan even had a kind of worship towards Jun Moxie. After all, Li Yuan had never been convinced by anyone in his life. Everyone in the same generation as him was several levels lower than him, and simply could not be mentioned in the same breath. Therefore, although Li Yuan looked like a modest gentleman on the surface, he had always been arrogant and supercilious. But Jun Moxie had appeared out of nowhere, and was several levels higher than Li Yuan. Therefore, Li Yuan somewhat worshipped him. Moreover, ever since Li Yuan had talked to Jun Moxie, he had faintly felt that Jun Moxie did not have much hostility towards him. On the contrary, he might even be of help. What I, Li Yuan, have never sought for is the venerable or the saint. Those are too far away from me. What I want is the secular world, and I only want to possess it. That's all. But if I want to obtain Jun Moxie's help, I will have to pay a price to exchange for it. Li Yuan was very clear about Jun Moxie's character. He would definitely not let anyone reap without sowing. In fact, even if we are still enemies in the future, you already owe me a lot of favors. This was the main reason why Li Yuan had done this. Li Yuan faced Chen Chong, and after a moment of silence, he said, "It is not that this junior is being presumptuous, but there is another reason. Please listen to this junior's explanation. First, the purpose. May I ask, seniors, is the purpose of this operation to kill that mysterious person, or to subdue him? After all, this person is able to refine such a heaven-defying medicinal pill. He is far too important to the future of our 3 holy lands. I believe that we will only choose to kill him if we have no other choice. This kind of result is undoubtedly the worst choice. Before coming here, Lord City Lord had also entrusted this matter to me, and it is precisely because of this that this junior has raised this objection." Everyone was startled. This kid was right. Another point is this person's strength. May I be so bold as to ask, amongst all the seniors present here, is there any senior who is confident in being able to kill or capture this person? Even forcing him to retreat would be good. The 9 saints frowned at the same time. This was something that none of them had the slightest bit of confidence in. In fact, even if the 9 of them joined forces, they might not even be able to defeat this person. With Li Yuan's intelligence, she had naturally deduced this point long ago. However, her expression did not change as she continued, putting yourself in their shoes. If this person were to kidnap someone close to you and threaten you, what would you do? Even if it was not to the extent of being irreconcilable enemies, I'm afraid there would not be any possibility of cooperation in this lifetime, right? Everyone nodded their heads. There is another factor, and that is Jun Zhantian's personality. If you want to kidnap someone, only Jun Zhantian has the ability to do so. But with this old man's temper, he is extremely irritable. Furthermore, he will never be humiliated in his entire life. If he dies because of this, Li Yuan said calmly, then, the 3 holy lands will definitely attract this expert's hatred and revenge. After all, disciple entrusted the family to him before he left. Now, in just a few days, the most important person has died. If it were you seniors, what would you do? Even if the 3 holy lands might not care, it would not be a good thing. At the very least, you would cut off all chances of cooperation with this person. What would you do? Of course, go crazy. Take revenge. Vent his anger. All the saints nodded their heads slowly. How could they not care? With such a powerful expert, even if the 3 holy lands were to face him, they would also be badly battered. If not for this, why would the 9 saints be gathered here? Therefore, this junior believes that the best way to deal with this expert is to fight him head-on. Li Yuan said. Firstly, it would appear to be open and aboveboard. Secondly, it would be more in line with each other's identities. At the very least, it would not cause too much disgust. Thirdly, let me make a bold guess. Having reached this level of cultivation, one's temperament should also be rather lonely. Once he sees so many experts on the same level as him, haha, he should be very happy, right? This is indeed very reasonable. Chen Chong looked at Li Yuan approvingly. That's right, that's how it should be. Senior is too kind. Li Yuan said modestly. It had to be said that Li Yuan's eloquence was indeed exceptional. Her words caused the 9 saints to nod their heads in agreement. A head-on battle is indeed good. However, the problem now is, how can we make him fight us head-on without avoiding a fight? After all, we have more people on our side. Miao Wuji scratched his head awkwardly. Only now did everyone realize that the problem had returned to the beginning. So after discussing for so long, there was no solution at all: letter of challenge, lure him out, or alarm him. Chen Chong gritted his teeth. For now, we'll follow these 3 methods. We must lure him out at all costs. Only one person can go at a time, and they can't stay for more than 10 breaths of time. If there is no result, return immediately. Everyone nodded their heads. 10 breaths of time was the amount of time needed to control saint experts like them. Even a saint king couldn't control a saint just because they wanted to. 10 breaths of time was the minimum amount of time needed to gather their energy, communicate with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and then transform it into a power that could restrict a saint expert. As long as their movements weren't controlled, no one could stop a saint expert from leaving. They could leave as they pleased. Even the 9 serenities and 14 masters couldn't do anything about it. Their safety could be guaranteed. Everyone nodded their heads, and the matter was settled for the time being. Thus, in the next few days, the number of nightwalkers visiting the June residence could be said to be endless. They all left as soon as they arrived. Even if they stayed, it was only for a few breaths of time for an ordinary person. There was provocation, psionic energy shrouding them, frightening howls, strange noises, and there was always a gilded letter of challenge that was formally delivered to the June residence. In the face of all this, the June family was like a proud princess facing a hoodlum's whistle from afar. They didn't budge at all. They didn't even bother to look at it. There was nothing they could do. They couldn't move even if they wanted to. The combined strength of the entire June family was not even comparable to a single breath from one of the 9 of them. What was there to move? Thus, for the time being, time passed slowly. Chapter 735. Today's first update. Went to attend a wedding and delayed quite a bit of time. I'm currently working overtime. June Moxie had only seen the scroll that suddenly appeared, and the first 5 words that suddenly appeared, and he was already shocked to an unimaginable extent. Judging from the scroll alone, or the handwriting, either one of these 2 aspects was an antique that couldn't be any more ancient. Furthermore, the 9 nether first young master, this person seemed to be someone from at least 10,000 years ago. The founder of Xian Qi in the entire Xian continent. He was the most legendary figure in the world. How did such a person know about me 10,000 years later? What relationship does he have with me? He even knows the name of my previous life. All of this was inconceivable and incomprehensible awe. Could it be that someone really had unparalleled abilities to understand the past and predict the future? As the scroll continued to open, line after line of clear handwriting appeared before June Moxie's eyes. Those words were still as wild and unrestrained as ever. They were still as domineering and arrogant as ever, as though they were the only one in the world. Just by looking at these handwriting, one could imagine how wild and domineering this legendary figure, the 9 nether first young master, this crazy ancestor, was. Every word was brilliant, every word was ready for a showdown. Amidst the elegance, there was a kind of unrestrained and untamed, heaven and earth is my oyster. And all of June Moxie's attention was attracted by this scroll. Why? Don't tell me you're scared. Hee hee hee, little thing, don't be disheartened. After all, in the past 10,000 years, there really hasn't been anyone who isn't scared in front of this young master. I believe you won't be an exception. The arrogance and ridicule in these words made it seem as if the Nine-Nether First young master was standing right in front of June Imosia, looking at him with disdain. It was as if a high and mighty god was looking at a group of mortals, no different from the masses. Fuck. You want to scare me with these fucking scribbles? You're mistaken. Do you think this young master is the same as those mortals? Did he really think that he was someone important? Do you think you'll be so radiant just because I give you a little sunlight? June Moxie couldn't hold back his anger. He scolded the air as if he was facing the Nine-Nether First young master himself. Although he knew that the extremely arrogant guy wasn't in front of him, June Moxie could feel an indescribable fighting spirit. He was actually looked down upon by a few scribbles. This kind of feeling made June Moxie feel strongly unconvinced. Besides, he was indeed frightened just now. Good boy, you really dare to scold this young master. This young master is really regretful now. If I could stay here until now, I could come in front of you and strip off your clothes and let you be naked in front of all your female friends. I could hang you up high and give you a good spanking on your white buttocks. How dare you scold this young master? You're fucking awesome. This young master has never seen someone as awesome as you. You're 10,000 years too late. This is your greatest fortune. The Nine-Nether First young master's message seemed to have predicted all of June Moxie's actions and thoughts without the slightest bit of error. You fucking dare. If I catch you, I'll directly strip off your pants and drag you through the streets of Tianxiang City with your D***ck hanging out. June Moxie's eyes emitted sparks as he bared his fangs and brandished his claws. Why is this Nine-Nether First young master's words so thick like a hooligan's? Isn't it a little too vulgar? It seems like he and this young master have the same goal, but different methods to achieve the same result. This was naturally one of the biggest doubts in June Moxie's heart. This tone was clearly that of a hooligan from the streets. How did it have the demeanor of a grandmaster or a legendary figure? From these few sentences, June Moxie could vaguely picture an image, the Nine-Nether First young master holding chopsticks in one hand and picking at his foot with the other. Occasionally, he would even bring it to his nose to sniff, such a wretched appearance. This was very different from the legendary Nine-Nether First young master in June Moxie's heart. And completely different from the legendary Nine-Nether First young master. Are you curious about this young master's tone? Little June Moxie, this young master was forced by you. Damn it, for someone as talented as this young master, it's naturally a small matter if I really wrote a long piece. But I'm worried that you'll throw this scroll into the stove before you even read half of it. You won't have the interest to continue reading it. So, this young master has put in a lot of effort for you. It's fine if you don't know how to be grateful, but you actually scolded this young master for being vulgar. June Moxie couldn't help but sweat in his heart. This Nine-Nether First young master really did not misjudge him at all. If he really wrote a piece of classical literature, no matter how extravagant it was, June Moxie would probably have burned it long ago. I have to say, it's really refreshing to speak like this. He could scold and say whatever he wanted. This was the supreme realm of doing as he pleased. A mouthful of vulgar things, a long piece to guide people to do good. Not to mention that you're not willing to read it, even this young master isn't willing to write it. The people I hate the most in my life are those hypocrites and fake Taoism. To actually want to talk about Taoism and **T etiquette with this young master. So in a fit of rage, this young master burned all the books in the entire world. Fuck their grandma's balls. Don't be fooled by their sanctimonious appearance, full of benevolence and morality. At night, who knows which brothel they'll be in to have a good time. Remember, if you meet such people, you must eliminate them completely. Because these hypocrites are worse than the hooligans on the streets. Although hooligans aren't good either, at least they're bad on the surface. At this point, June Moxie finally couldn't help but clap his hands in admiration. This fellow's temperament is really the same as mine. As expected, he understands my heart. Pfft, why is it so sour? It should be because he's too much to my liking. If he's still here, this young master will burn yellow paper and behead a chicken's head to become sworn brothers with him. Cough cough, this topic seems to have strayed a little too far. I know that you're still depressed, so this young master will help you clear your doubts. Jun Moxie furrowed his brows. He finally realized that this nine-nether first young master had a catchphrase, this young master. He didn't call himself lousy or anything else. From the beginning to the end, it was just this simple, this young master. You're at least 10,000 years old, a real standard old monster. And you still have the cheek to call yourself this young master. It doesn't seem appropriate no matter how you look at it, right? Jun Dashao criticized in his heart, but his eyes continued to read. If you continue to scold me, this young master will make this scroll disappear immediately. Do you believe it? This sentence made Jun Moxie completely speechless. This ancestor-level character from 10,000 years ago was really unconventional. This young master is immortal. Even if I'm hundreds of millions of years old, I'll still have the face of a 17 or 18-year-old. Why can't I call myself this young master? Could it be that you want to see this young master call himself this old master? Why don't you imagine a 17 or 18-year-old baby-faced kid calling himself this old master? How would you feel? Jun Moxie was sweating profusely, like a waterfall. What's going on here? This nine-nether first young master's mind was really shocking to him. He kept saying that he wanted to explain, but up until now, he didn't even explain a single word and only spouted nonsense. Isn't this just whetting my appetite? Besides, even if I scold you now, you don't have the ability to make this scroll disappear immediately. Do you think this is still that 10,000 years ago? Forget it, we're all smart people. This young master probably won't be able to scare you. But it's rare for this young master to have such a chance to tease the younger generation, especially teasing you after 10,000 years. This young master has quite a sense of accomplishment. Consider it that you're respecting your elders. Jun Xia, my good boy, just continue to watch patiently. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes and almost fainted. This fellow's sense of humor was really thick. If he really had to be respectful to a 17 or 18-year-old baby-faced kid, then stop thinking blindly. I know what you're thinking and doubting. But this young master has to tell you seriously, you're a little idiot. An extremely stupid little fellow, you've guessed wrong. You're completely wrong, completely wrong. You're going in the opposite direction. Jun Xia really had the urge to tear that scroll to shreds. He had been scolded for nearly half an hour in the face of a mere scroll. What the fuck was going on? You must be guessing that this young master probably came from the same place as you. Waha, you're wrong. This young master is very resourceful, and it's not something that a good boy like you can guess. Feel depressed, feel aggrieved. Jun Moxie's breathing was heavy, and the veins on his forehead bulged. This young master is actually being looked down upon like this. This young master came from the Nine Nethers. Do you know what the Nine Nethers is? Be good, this young master will tell you slowly. Be patient, don't be impatient, there's no use in being impatient. Young Master Jun finally let out an angry roar and stood up. His fist landed heavily on the words Nine Nether First Young Master on the stone wall. He was really about to be burnt with rage from this fellow's teasing. After venting for a while, he panted heavily for a while before sitting down again. As he expected, the stone wall did not budge, and not even a single piece of stone fell off. This was not because the stone wall was too hard, but because the Nine Nether First Young Master had used a special method to make it like this, Kakik. As expected, you can't hold it in anymore. Good boy, your temperament still needs to be tempered. A strange laughter came from the scroll. Jun Moxie could see a seemingly young fellow laughing so hard that he was convulsing back and forth. Chapter 736. You are indeed worth teaching. June Emos, yeah, your temper can be said to be your greatest weakness in this life. Facing this young master's little teasing from 10,000 years ago, you can actually get so angry. TSK, I have to say, if you don't change your temper, there will come a time when you will suffer in the future. Although this sentence was still somewhat frivolous, the handwriting was more or less serious. Rather than saying it was teasing, it would be better to say that it was advice, or even a more serious warning. June Moxie couldn't help but feel shocked. He actually felt a burst of clarity in his mind, and he instantly calmed down. He silently said in his heart, "Thank you very much." Although there was a faint thought in his heart, if it wasn't for this teasing from 10,000 years ago, I'm afraid there really isn't anyone who can make this young master angry in the real world. But getting angry was getting angry. No matter what the reason was, it was the same fait accompli. Therefore, June Moxie calmly faced it. The following content seemed to be much more formal. The 9 Underworlds is indeed a very strange place. But it is hard to say how strange it is in a few words. The 9 Underworlds is also known as the Land of the Fallen Gods. Or, the Land of the Fallen Gods. All year round, there isn't the slightest bit of light. It is always in endless darkness. Most people spend their entire lives in darkness like this. Moreover, this world is full of bloodshed, killing, and disputes. The beings of the 9 Underworlds are faced with killing from the moment they are born. Perhaps it's the survival of the fittest. The beings of the 9 Underworlds are born with extremely valiant combat abilities. All the skills are sealed in their minds. But this isn't reaping without sowing. They need to constantly break through obstacles, and they need to constantly defeat themselves. Only after breaking through their own shackles can they obtain the sealed inheritance. And only a very small part of it. Only by constantly attacking and breaking through, can they obtain more and more inheritance. This undoubtedly requires indomitable willpower to break through bit by bit, and unearth their strongest strength. Therefore, the 9 Underworlds have always been the race with the strongest combat strength. But those who can stand at the peak can also be counted on one hand. Similarly, the 9 Nether clan is a clan that will never be satisfied, and they are filled with ambition that is difficult to suppress. The lifespan of the 9 Nether tribe is extremely long, and according to the Xian continent's calendar, any random person can easily live for several thousand years without any problem. June Moxie sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of monstrous clan was this 9 Nether clan? They were actually so different. Without light all year round, what did they eat? Don't they need to work? Don't plants need photosynthesis? Why does it look so similar to the legendary Azura realm in the 6 Paths of Reincarnation? At the peak of Abysmal Sanctuary, there's a door to heaven. Throughout the ages, there were countless seniors of the 9 Underworlds who wanted to pass through the gate to heaven. Because according to legend, passing through this door to the heavens would allow one to arrive at a paradise of life. There was light, flowers, and grass. There were white, green, and red, and these were the things that the 9 Nether clan yearned for the most. However, the land of ultimate bliss is filled with indescribable dangers. If one wants to reach the land of ultimate bliss and pass through the door that leads to heaven, then one must overcome those great dangers. This path to heaven can be said to be a path of certain death in the netherworld realm. In these hundreds of millions of years, to my knowledge, there was only this young master who successfully passed through. The other seniors who tried to pass through the gate to heaven, all died in the gate to heaven. Although there was some arrogance and complacency in these words, but June Moxie could still see the deep sorrow in those difficult words. Ever since this young master came to this continent, I was mesmerized by it at first sight. It's really too beautiful, and the land of extreme bliss indeed lives up to its name. So the first day this young master came to this land, I swore to conquer this continent completely. To become my own backyard. Since ancient times, I am the only one. So, at the same time I swore this oath, this young master began his conquest impatiently. June Moxie sighed. This lunatic really couldn't be blamed. Anyone who came out from a completely dark place and suddenly saw the magnificent scenery of mountains, water, flowers, red grass, and green grass, would probably have the same thought. Or perhaps this could no longer be called ambition, but an indescribable desire to possess. To put it in a more vulgar way, it was pure jealousy. The 9 Nether first young master was like this, and so were the other 9 Nether young masters. Not long after, this young master discovered that the people in this world were really too weak. So weak that it was unimaginable to this young master. At that time, there were still a few people who claimed to be strong. But under this young master's hands, even if they joined forces, they couldn't withstand more than 100 moves. This made this young master very dissatisfied. Alas, looking around the world, there was actually no one who could match up to me, and I reached the peak of loneliness so easily. That kind of loneliness and solitude really chilled this young master's heart. In addition, although the people in this world were extremely weak, they were full of schemes and schemes, full of mutual deceit. The operations against this young master basically all started like this. And this young master had always pretended not to know, stepped into their traps, and then broke out of them. This made this young master happy a few times, and perhaps only then could I find a little bit of fun. What a pervert! June Moxie sighed speechlessly. Then, he read the next paragraph, and realized that the next paragraph truly proved the 9 Nether first young master's nickname of pervert. Being invincible was indeed the loneliest. So lonely that one could only create some fun that wasn't fun in the first place. This young master is immune to all poisons, and invulnerable to weapons. Even broken arms can be regrown, and true essence is endless. These mere mortals, even if they had 1,000 tricks and 10,000 plots, how could they do anything to this young master? So, after 200 years, this young master finally got tired of it. Left with no choice, I could only fulfill my long-cherished wish, to ascend to the world, and become the ruler of the continent. As long as the 9 Nether order is given, all the heroes in the world will obey it. Unfortunately, after the joy of fulfilling my long-cherished wish, this young master felt that I had no goal. Since there was no goal, then I would create a new goal. So, this young master created a set of 7 colors exquisite battle arts based on the physique of the people in this continent, and spread it to the world, accepting disciples. But, there were actually ignorant people who said that this young master's mental cultivation method was all trash. How could this young master not be angry? So, I collected all the books and records in the world, and burned them all. After 10 years, I brainwashed all the strong people, and those who were not convinced were killed. Rotten scholars, slaughtered. At this point, the chilling intent was already apparent on the paper. Even with June Moxie's calm temperament, he couldn't help but shiver. How many people did he have to kill in the end? Another few hundred years passed, and the 7 colors exquisite battle arts could be seen everywhere in the Xian continent. All the original martial arts were destroyed in a day. Those trashy martial arts were not worthy to exist in the same world as the mental cultivation method that this young master created. This young master has a clear conscience. And according to the name of the Xian continent, the 7 colors exquisite battle arts were renamed as Xian-Qi. After spending another 100 years, this set of cultivation method was completely perfected, and it became a powerful cultivation method that could create real strong people. Accepting disciples, imparting skills, and having students all over the world. So, this was the origin of the Xian-Qi martial arts in the Xian continent. So, when this fellow burned the books and records, brainwashed people, and then spread Xian-Qi, this set of cultivation method was just a draft. June Moxie broke out in cold sweat. Wasn't this fellow afraid that people would go crazy from practicing it? There wasn't even a follow-up cultivation method, and he was so ruthless, as expected of the legendary lunatic. But this was also quite reasonable. If he could consider everything so thoroughly, then he wouldn't be the so-called 9 Nether first young master. As time passed, this young master's cultivation also became higher and higher. But I suddenly realized that after coming to this world, other than finding 99 wives, I actually didn't do anything too remarkable or memorable, fuck. This sentence made June Moxie's jaw drop. He couldn't help but curse out loud. Are you a fucking pig? 99 wives. Aren't you afraid of sucking you dry? How many do you have to change every day? June Dashao cursed uncontrollably. You're really a super big lecher, old lecher. And, you've already unified the continent and made the entire continent only cultivate your own cultivation method. You're the ruler of the world, and you're still saying I actually didn't do anything too remarkable or memorable. Is this considered modesty? Or is it an obscure boast? In an instant, June Dashao was so agitated by this sentence that he almost suffered internal injuries. He spat out dozens of mouthfuls of blood. Then how could he have the right to say, I've done a lot of things? This was too much of a blow to his pride. So, this young master has stayed enough on this continent, so I thought of going for a stroll. This sentence of the nether first young master once again hit June Moxie hard. Without a doubt, this thought of going for a stroll was definitely not a sightseeing trip, but a stroll on other planets. June Moxie sucked in a breath of cold air as if he had a toothache. He didn't even have the mood to scold him anymore. But at that time, the cultivation of my 99 wives wasn't high, so it was delayed for 1,000 years. After 1,000 years, this young master brought my beautiful wives and finally left this world successfully, arriving at a strange place called Earth. June Moxie covered his face with his hands and groaned. So this fellow really went to Earth. Then, for Earth to still exist now, it's really an unbelievable thing. That place called Earth is actually even more beautiful than this paradise. This young master was so happy that he forgot about his duties. Just like that, I found quite a number of wives. Chapter 737. But this young master no longer has the desire to conquer. My mentality is much calmer. June Moxie thought, I can guess this even if you don't say it. With your abnormal martial arts, isn't it a matter of minutes to conquer the Earth? What's more, he has 99 equally abnormal beautiful wives. He can even travel through the stars, it's hard not to be abnormal. This young master has always been open and aboveboard, I will say whatever I say. The reason why this young master hasn't launched an expedition is because there are still a lot of experts guarding that planet, and some of them are actually not inferior to this young master in terms of cultivation, maybe even a hair stronger than this young master. Since I can't be the sole ruler, there's no point in me staying there. Originally, I took in a disciple who was very suitable to my taste, but before I could teach him martial arts, an accident happened, forcing this young master to leave. So I came back here. This passage is vague and somewhat secretive, as if it's like holding a pipa and covering half of its face. June Moxie didn't even need to think to guess that this fellow must have suffered a setback on Earth. He really didn't know which powerful being was able to teach this pervert a lesson. This left June Moxie extremely shocked. But, he also felt a strong sense of pride. Earth, home, domineering. Forget it, talking about this past always makes this young master very unhappy. Let's stop talking about this. It seems that this guy also feels a little embarrassed, so he used the spring and autumn period style to cut and delete. June Moxie curled his lips. You also know that there's always someone better out there, don't you? You dare to be arrogant in my home, you're going against the heavens. Speaking of which, I really feel sorry for that disciple of mine. I just finished the personality transfer and the introduction of our sect, and then left. I don't know how he will end up. I guess it won't be too bad, after all, he is the disciple I chose. That little guy called Ingzheng, when I have time, I will go over and teach you. June Moxie staggered and fell to the ground. Ingzheng. Qin Shi. No wonder that guy was so passionate about fighting, so passionate about conquering, so passionate about immortality, and also did something like burning books and burying scholars. So the root cause was here. It was all taught and influenced by this goddamn pervert. You'd better not train him. You've only said a few words, and you've created an emperor who has unified the entire divine land. That guy has lived his whole life, and the war never seemed to stop. God knows it was because of you. That's true, that kind of fanatical desire to conquer that came from the bones. Apart from a perverted madman like the Nine Nether First Young Master, no one else seemed to be able to impart it so thoroughly. Ever since I came back, I built this stone mansion and have been living here, cultivating my body and mind. After 1,000 years, I finally understood the principle of heaven. Thus, the past, the present, the past, and the future all appeared before his eyes. Whatever I want to know, I don't need to think or think about it, and I'll know it naturally. That day, I had a flash of inspiration, and I knew that after 10,000 years, there would still be a strange outsider like you. This gave me quite a pleasant surprise. Especially since you're from that mysterious earth, this young master's hands are itching. But for this young master to wait for 10,000 years, and for you to reach the highest level of cultivation before I can fight with you, this kind of wait is really too long. So this young master is here to have a good talk with you. Lad, when you're at your peak, this young master will naturally show up to fight with you. This young master suffered a little in your hometown. Cough cough, naturally, I'll get it back from you. This sentence was written with strong strokes and a hint of battle intent. What? Get it back? Fuck. What does it have to do with me that you suffered a loss? Why do you have to find trouble with me? June Moxie stared dumbfoundedly at the scribbles on the scroll. He finally had a new understanding of this fellow's level of incomprehensibility. Looks like this fellow suffered quite a bit on Earth back then. At the very least, it was a huge loss of face. That's why he couldn't forget about it. But here, the Nine Nether First Young Master had mentioned something, the logic of heaven? What logic was the logic of heaven? June Moxie fell into deep thought. After a long time, he continued reading. Next, this young master is going back to my hometown to see if there are any worthy opponents there. Then, I'll continue to wander around. I hope that when this young master returns one day, you won't disappoint this young master again. June Moxie frowned. So this fellow had returned to the Nine Nether First Young Master. Then, needless to say, the so-called Nine Nether Second Young Master to the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters should be the follow-up of this fellow. Otherwise, how could it be so neat? Every 1,000 years, there would be a guy with such wild ambitions appearing. You're really lucky, kid. It's fine if you come, but you actually brought a treasure with you. Of all the things you shouldn't have done, you actually brought the goddamn treasure that you're so proud of. If this young master doesn't find trouble with you, who should I find trouble with? These words were filled with deep resentment. June Moxie finally understood. So it was this great person who caused the Nine Nether First Young Master to suffer a loss, Hong Jun Old Ancestor. At this moment, Jun Imo Xie's heart was filled with a deep sense of reverence. You're really impressive. Our prestige is all because of you. It's impossible not to be impressed. Such a perverted fellow also suffered a loss in your hands. This time, you've gotten lucky. All the treasures that this young master has collected over the past tens of thousands of years are all here. Let's see if you have the ability to find them. Also, there's a big surprise for you. Let's see how capable you are. Just this cave alone is enough for you to squander. This is where the #1 spirit vein of the Xian continent is located. But there's one more thing that this young master has to warn you about. The 3 holy lands are ultimately my disciples and grand disciples. You better know your limits. It's fine to teach them a lesson, but you must not eradicate them. Otherwise, when this young master comes back, I'll show you. These words were filled with a threatening intent. This young master doesn't believe this. I'll definitely eradicate them for you. June Moxie tilted his head and spat. If you have the ability, come and bite me now. Since there's an expert on Earth who can teach you a lesson, this old man will definitely be able to make a baby-faced old monster like you scream in the future. Writing for so long is actually a fucking strenuous work. This young master doesn't have that much time to chat with you. You better pay attention to everything you do. If you don't make the best use of your time to practice, when this young master returns, you'll be the one who'll be embarrassed. Don't expect this young master to be merciful. If you're really slapped to death by this young master, you can only blame yourself for not working hard enough. It's not that this young master doesn't care about your feelings. Wife's calling, this young master is going. By right, it should have ended here. But there were still a few lines of words below. The handwriting was very messy, as if it was written in a hurry. Don't fucking act like you've gotten a bargain. Take a look at what this young master has left for you first before making your heavenly decision. Just like that, you're asking for a kick. When this young master comes back, I'll make you into 3,600 different shapes. Let me warn you again, don't try to use those little tricks you've learned to change this world. You're still far from it. At this point, it was a series of curses and a series of exclamation marks. When he finally finished reading, June Moxie's face was filled with black lines. Looking at this scroll, it was just a long paragraph of words, but it actually made June Dashao feel like vomiting blood multiple times. So infuriating. Luckily, this fellow came to Earth during the spring and autumn warring states period. At that time, curses had not evolved to this level yet. If he really transmigrated to the modern era, he'd probably be angered to death by this scroll, and his corpse would even be jumping around in his coffin. However, the time here was more than 10,000 years, while the time on Earth was only about 2,000 years. What was going on? Could there be such a huge difference in the time of the two planets? Of course, he couldn't figure this out. If he couldn't figure it out, then he shouldn't think about it. Then, what did the last sentence mean? Don't try to use those little tricks you've learned to change this world. This sentence seemed to have a very deep meaning. What could change this world? It was nothing more than advanced technology, advanced civilization, and gunpowder. But when these things were developed, the Nine Nether First Young Master had already left Earth, right? How did he know? Could it be that the so-called insight into the past and future also meant that he knew about these things? June Moxie thought for a while and felt relieved. The Nine Nether First Young Master even knew that he had transmigrated to this place. What else was there that he didn't know? This already included the past and future. June Mo Xia stared blankly at this strange scroll as it lay limply on the ground like a snake shedding its skin. He couldn't tell what he was feeling for a moment. Astonishment, shock, disbelief, admiration, and yearning. Such earth-shattering strength, such valiance, such pride and arrogance, idle. Who would have thought that I'm actually the strongest opponent that the number one pervert in history had decided to be after God knows how many years? An inexplicable sense of urgency suddenly rose in June Moxie's heart. He didn't feel the slightest bit of glory or complacency. He only felt a sense of urgency. Who knew when this fellow would go crazy and come back to kill him? So, raising his own strength as soon as possible was the most important thing. Reaching the 9th level of the Hongjun Pagoda as soon as possible and further enriching himself was the most important and urgent matter. Not only for this Nine Nether First Young Master, but even for the urgent matter now, he had to raise his strength as soon as possible. I will definitely not lose to you. Even if you are the ancestor of Xian Xian, even if you are an outstanding talent of the Nine Nethers. Even if you are a legend since the ancient times, but I am June Moxie. June, don't play tricks in front of me. Chapter 738. June Moxie's eyebrows were raised as sharp as swords, and his eyes shone brightly. June Mo Xia looked at the insufferably arrogant words on the stone wall, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled into a smile as he slowly said, "If you can do it, then why can't I, June Mo Xia?" And at this moment June Mo Xia's gaze suddenly shifted. The scroll that had fallen to the ground suddenly moved on its own, and inexplicably floated up, as if it was completing its final mission. In midair, right in front of June Mo Xia, it slowly turned into a dazzling ball of fire. Amidst the rising flames, the green smoke did not disperse. Instead, it slowly condensed into a spherical object that was neither too big nor too small. Then, on the surface of the spherical object, it slowly transformed into a set of patterns that June Emos was very familiar with. 7 large plates, surrounded by azure waters. The only structure that could be clearly seen was the Great Wall, winding on top of it. That was Earth. June Moxie's eyes widened, and suddenly, tears appeared in his eyes without any warning. My hometown in my previous life. When can the me in this life go back? I really want to go back, really want to. June Moxie felt an indescribable sourness in his heart. After a long time, he slowly raised his head. The miniature pattern of Earth in front of him had already disappeared without a trace. Along with it, the scroll that the 9 Nether First Young Master had left behind had also disappeared. When I reach the level of the 9 Nether First Young Master, I must definitely go back and take a look. Even, just a glance is good enough. June Moxie silently said to himself in his heart. After calming himself down, June Moxie then began to carefully size up this underground hall. This was the place where the 9 Nether First Young Master claimed that he had collected tens of thousands of years' worth of treasures. It could be said that if what the 9 Nether First Young Master said was true, then this would be the most perverted treasure vault in the entire world. To this, June Moxie was filled with anticipation. Especially when the 9 Nether First Young Master had once said, "I've left a huge surprise for you here." However, what kind of surprise could be considered as a big surprise? Especially since it was a big surprise from the mouth of this lunatic. In this regard, June Dashao did not care too much. That thing was definitely not easy to find. After all, it was already a great surprise to be able to find this place. June Emos followed the nearest stone wall, and slowly groped his way over. As far as the eye could see, everything in this huge stone hall could be seen at a glance. Apart from the 14 large words on the stone wall and the stone table and stools in the middle that could accommodate 500 people at the same time, there seemed to be nothing else, but with the 9 Nether First Young Master's status and personality, he would never lie to her. June Moxie was very confident about this. Carefully groping, June Moxie searched every inch of the stone wall. He firmly believed that if there really was a hidden mechanism in this place, it would definitely exist on this stone wall. What he needed now, other than attentiveness, was more attentiveness. If there was any negligence, it would be a huge regret. Because if he left, he wouldn't know when he would come back again, but after carefully groping for several tens of zhang, he still found nothing. June Moxie was stunned and suddenly stopped. He was thinking about a question. If I were the 9 Nether First Young Master, where would I place the mechanism? If I were the 9 Nether First Young Master, then, where would I be when I'm in this hall normally? After thinking about this for a long time, June Moxie suddenly returned to the stone wall with those 14 words. He closed his eyes and thought about it carefully. With the 9 Nether First Young Master's arrogant attitude, then, if he were to sit under those 14 words, and let everyone who saw him first see these arrogant, despotic, and disdainful words. This way, there would be a feeling of a monarch overlooking the world. And he would definitely feel good about himself. So June Moxie returned to the bottom of those 14 words, widened his eyes, and carefully observed the ground. Because he guessed that there must have been a big chair here, with a wave of his sleeves, with a boom, a pile of dust was swept up from the ground. But this pile of dust did not seem to be ordinary dust. It actually did not disperse with the force of the sleeves, but moved as a whole, without the annoyance of flying in the air. It was like a layer of carpet being moved out. How strange, even the dust in the 9 Nether First Young Master's place is so awesome. June Dashao shook his head, speechless. As expected, there were 4 parts below that had some slight wear and tear. With one look, June Moxie knew that these were the results of the 4 legs being placed on the ground for a long period of time. The 9 Nether First Young Master must have sat here in the past. But, the distance between these 4 marks seemed to be a little too big, right? There's actually a distance of 3 to 4 zhang. What kind of chair is so big? June Moxie couldn't help but rub his chin, feeling puzzled. Just beside one of the marks, there was a protrusion. It was round and protruded as high as a finger. June Moxie went over, stretched out his foot, and stomped down hard. Suddenly, with a hoot sound, a huge object abruptly fell from the top of his head. Hoot sound, it suddenly landed in that position, and then stopped moving. Not a single sound was emitted. The 4 brackets and the 4 marks were seamlessly joined together. There was not the slightest bit of dislocation. June Moxie stood at the spot where he stepped on the mechanism. He didn't move, nor did he dodge. Because he knew that the 9 Nether First Young Master must have stood there to activate the mechanism. And with this deduction, how would the 9 Nether First Young Master let this thing fall on his head? So, although it looked a little dangerous, but when this thing fell, only the position where June Moxie was standing was the safest position. Finally seeing what had fallen, June Moxie couldn't help but exclaim, "What the fuck? How was this a seat?" It was a bed. It was a bed, and it was a huge bed, a huge bed. This bed was so spacious that it could accommodate 100 people sleeping on it. This fellow was really a shameless and licentious person. June Moxie looked at the bed with disdain and envy. If one day, he could get Mei Shuian, Guan Qinghan, De Xiaoyi, and the rest onto this bed at the same time, and ride around. He. As he thought about it, June Dashao couldn't help but rub his chin and laugh lewdly. His eyes also shone with a lust. As he walked closer, June Moxie actually felt his entire body warm up. Only then did he realize that this huge bed was actually made of 10,000-year-old warm jade. And it wasn't pieced together. This entire bed was carved out of a huge piece of 10,000-year-old warm jade. Whether it was the hollowness or the walls of the bed, they were all made of it. June Moxie sucked in a breath of cold air. Just this bed alone was already a priceless treasure. 10,000-year-old warm jade could cure incurable illnesses, strengthen the body, and prolong one's lifespan. The benefits were simply indescribable. With an indescribable feeling, he walked closer and touched this warm jade bed. June Moxie was shocked again. Where his hand touched, a part of the bed had actually sunk in. It was smooth to the touch, and an indescribable comfortable feeling spread all the way to his heart. June Moxie felt a wave of dizziness. This was not only 10,000-year-old warm jade, but also the rarest of 10,000-year-old warm jade. This was an absolute treasure that was tens of thousands of times more precious than 10,000-year-old warm jade. Just by absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual chi from this 10,000-year-old warm jade, one's cultivation would increase by leaps and bounds. June Moxie's eyes emitted a wolf-like glint. This. Heavens. How am I supposed to bring such a huge thing away? Especially now that the Hongjun Pagoda isn't doing anything and isn't cooperating, but if I don't bring it away, I really can't bear to part with it. Who knows if I'll be able to enter again next time. The current June Moxie was like a granddad who had discovered a golden mountain thousands of miles away from his home. He couldn't bring it away even if he wanted to. If he didn't bring it away, he would die on the spot in a sullen manner. What was the feeling of a miser who had discovered a golden mountain but couldn't bring away even a speck of gold? June Moxie sighed. This perverted fellow seemed to know how to enjoy life too much. Just this warm and soft jade bed alone was already indescribable. Let's put it this way. Lying on this bed to sleep, even if there weren't any beauties beside him, the feeling would still be as if there were countless beauties lying beneath him. I believe that ordinary men wouldn't be able to enjoy the feeling of lying on this warm jade bed. Because they would lose their virginity in a few days. But if a man was successful in his cultivation, and had many beauties as his companions, on this jade bed, drip, 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 June Dashao's saliva flowed down unconsciously and fell to the ground with a clear sound. His eyes emitted a kind of green light that only a veteran pervert had the qualifications to emit. It was unknown what he was thinking in his heart. In short, the expression on his face was one of vulgarity and lasciviousness. In short, it was an extremely cheap light. With a patang sound, June Moxie's entire body jumped onto the bed. With two pu sounds, his 2 shoes fell to the ground. Lying on the bed, June Moxie only felt that his entire body was bathed in the embrace of beauties. In an instant, even his soul was being ironed. What a great treasure, this fellow really knows how to enjoy life. June Dashao squinted his eyes and said in a voice that was so comfortable that it was almost trembling. After lingering for a long time, he finally propped up his body and adjusted his position according to his imagination. After looking left and right and confirming that his current position was the most flashy and pretentious one, June Moxie then started to check his sides. If there was a mechanism, it would probably be set on this bed. And from the way the Nine Nether First young master was so good at enjoying life, it definitely wouldn't be too far from his hands. It should be something that he could touch with just a stretch of his hand. As expected, where June Moxie's arms had just stretched out, there were a few buttons on both sides. Chapter 739. The mechanism was activated. Creaking sounds rang out slowly, light and slow. There wasn't the slightest bit of noise that a normal mechanism would make. It only rang out for a short while before it was completely silent. June Moxie looked at the huge stone door that gradually appeared on the other side. His heart was filled with shock. June Dashao had carefully touched the place just now and didn't find any gaps at all. But the moment he pressed the mechanism, this door suddenly appeared. Just this move alone was enough to make one gasp in amazement. How intricate was this? Apart from being a martial arts grandmaster, this Nine Nether First young master was also a master of mechanisms. Such an intricate mechanism setup could really be said to be a work of art that surpassed nature. Especially when such an intricate mechanism was set up underground. That was even more rare and precious. There was another point. From those light sounds at the start to the complete silence, June Moxie understood that the slight noises at the start was because it hadn't been activated even once in 10,000 years. When a mechanism that had been silent for a long time was suddenly activated, it was inevitable that there would be some movement. Even if it was a relatively loud noise, it wouldn't be strange. But this time, the mechanism only made a slight noise before it disappeared. This undoubtedly meant that this mechanism had already gotten used to the current rhythm. In just a blink of an eye. This was a mechanism from at least 10,000 years ago. And it actually recovered its vitality just like that. June Moxie was truly dumbfounded. But what made him even more dumbfounded was yet to come. Or perhaps, this was just the prologue to his dumbfounded state. Following the activation of the mechanism, the hidden door flashed into view, revealing a wide, long passageway. It was 2 zhang tall and 3 zhang wide. The depth of the tunnel was extremely impressive. Judging from the looks of it, it was at least 100 zhang long. Although the passageway was long and narrow, it was not dark. Instead, it was filled with a gentle light. On the wall above the passageway, there were 2 luminous pearls placed side by side every 2 steps. Each of them was the size of a child's fist. They emitted a misty, gentle halo that illuminated the entire passageway. Any one of such a large luminous pearl was a priceless treasure. Even if it was a wealthy family or an inner court of the royal palace, if they had one, they would place it in a precious treasure box and carefully preserve it. Or they would use it to decorate the most gorgeous crown of the emperor and empress. But here, it was luxuriously embedded in the stone wall, becoming a lighting tool. However, it wasn't accurate to say that it was luxurious. There seemed to be too many night-luminescent pearls here. Those who didn't know their value might really make a mistake. No matter how precious something was, as long as there were a lot of them, it wouldn't be that rare anymore. Therefore, June Dashao was shocked at the beginning, and then, nothing much happened. June Moxie sighed from the bottom of his heart and slowly walked to the entrance of the tunnel. He felt a warm, charming, and rich fragrance hit him in the face, lingering for a long time. June Moxie stopped in his tracks. Obviously, judging from this fragrance, this should be the place where the 9 Nether First young master's lovers stayed. Looking over, the tunnel seemed to have no end. One could imagine the rooms of the ladies on both sides. June Moxie sighed again and walked in. As expected, there was a button every few meters. With a press of his hand, a stone door opened silently, revealing the beautiful and luxurious decorations inside: bed, dressing table, study table, all the necessary furniture was there. The beauties were gone, leaving only an empty room. The fragrance came from 10,000 years ago. June Moxie walked one round and counted. There should be a total of 136 rooms here. In other words, this Nether First Young Master alone had 136 wives. And, didn't he say that he only had 99 wives? Why were there 136 rooms here? June Moxie suddenly recalled, that fellow seemed to have only harmed 99 women in this world, but he should have brought back quite a number of them when he came to Earth. Judging from the number of rooms, he seemed to have brought back another 37, this was really a fucking powerful person. What a beast. No, he was even worse than a beast. With so many beauties working together, why didn't they get this fucking bastard? The heavens are blind. Jun Dashao, who was almost speechless, turned around and walked out with his face covered in dirt. He only entered the first room. He didn't enter any of the other rooms, nor did he open any of them to take a look. With the Nether First Young Master's character, he would definitely not place his treasures in the rooms of his wives and concubines. Actually, if it was Jun Dashao, he wouldn't do that either. In fact, Jun Moxie already had a feeling of blasphemy when he entered the first room. Towards the crazy Nether First Young Master, Jun Moxie had no scruples. He even dared to scold the Nether First Young Master if he was standing right in front of him. But towards these women, Jun Moxie couldn't, and wouldn't. What kind of taste did the Nether First Young Master have? How could any of the women that he had taken a fancy to be ordinary goods? So, Jun Moxie had some admiration and respect towards these women. So he immediately retreated, leaving this room that had been emitting a sweet fragrance for 10,000 years to be permanently sealed inside. With a push of his hand, he closed the stone door. At the moment when the passageway was about to close, the stone wall at the entrance of the passageway suddenly flashed and a piece of cloth hung down. Then, the cloth burst into flames. Within the flames was a young, handsome, yet rebellious, baby-like smiling face. The smiling face sighed and said, "As expected of Earth's legend, the evil monarch Jun Xia. If you enter this door and don't come out within the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, then the other mechanisms will be sealed forever. Even if you have that old fellow's unique tricks, it will be hard for you to escape from this young master's arrangements." Not bad, really not bad. This young master suddenly likes you a little. Then, the smiling face in the fire blinked and disappeared along with the fire. Looking at this smiling face that had suddenly disappeared, Jun Xia suddenly had a feeling that the battle with the Nether First Young Master had already begun the moment he entered this hall. Even now, it was still a battle between the two of them. Without a doubt, he had always been at a disadvantage. Only at this moment did he manage to turn the situation around a little. And this turnaround was mostly a coincidence. It was also because he had the same pride and arrogance as the Nether First Young Master. Respecting the family of the opponent was also respecting the opponent. And this respect was exchanged for the same return. Looks like this Nether First Young Master was the same as him, a person who was unwilling to take advantage of others for no reason. Jun Moxie thought for a while and returned to the warm jade bed. Suddenly, he made up his mind and pressed the remaining 7 buttons on both sides. A series of creaking sounds rang out, and in all directions of this hall, 1 to 2 long passageways appeared at the same time. Jun Moxie randomly chose the closest one and walked in leisurely. Right now, Jun Dashao's mood was very calm. Towards everything that had happened before him, he only felt that it was a matter of course. There was no longer any surprise. Don't be fooled by the fact that you've created such an earth-shattering hall of uncanny craftsmanship, and even revealed your ability to turn the clouds and rain with one turn of the hand. But there's one thing you must know, Jun Moxie will also have this day sooner or later. Besides, you've already lived for tens of thousands of years. If you don't even have this bit of ability, then I'll look down on you too much. Behind this stone door was a very standard warehouse. Or rather, it could be said to be a huge wardrobe. The space inside was rather big, but there were only 9 white clothes hanging on 9 hangers. It was impossible to tell the style of the clothes, as if they could be worn by both genders. And June Moxie could tell with one look that these clothes had definitely not been worn by anyone. He randomly picked one up and looked at it. June Moxie's tentacles gave him a fright. The texture of the clothes was neither silk nor silk. It was warm to the touch, as smooth as water, as light as a feather, yet extremely flexible. On the stone wall, a few lines of words were carved: warm jade coarse silk, impervious to swords and spears, impervious to water and fire, a treasure for defense. Extracted from 100,000-year warm jade core, refined with soul fire. Able to protect loved ones from harm. This is just a small token of my appreciation, not enough to show my respect. June Moxie was stunned. What did this mean? Could it be that he had really predicted that his loved ones would be harmed? That's why he specially left these clothes behind. June Moxie thought for a moment, then picked up a piece of clothing. Using his full strength, he used his hand as a knife and slashed it. The clothes swayed lightly, but were not damaged at all. This warm jade coarse silk was actually this strong. It was a treasure. June Moxie was overjoyed. With these 9 pieces of clothing, his mother, grandfather, third uncle, Guan Qinghan, Duga Xiaoi, and Mei Shuiyan would be safe. It was equivalent to taking a big step forward. But no matter how June Xia thought about it, he still couldn't understand it. Even if he included third aunt, he only needed 7 items. But there were 9 hanging here. What did this mean? Wasn't it supposed to predict the future? How could it have been wrong? June Moxie pondered for a moment, but still could not figure it out. He simply took down the 9 pieces of clothing, held them in his arms, and walked out. It was always better to have more than less. Sure enough, as soon as he stepped out, the stone door slowly closed behind him. There was no longer any gap between them. June Moxie placed the 9 treasured clothing on the huge jade bed, then continued to walk towards the next tunnel. Although the 9 treasured clothing were good, it was still far from what June Moxie had expected. In the next stone room, there were only 5 small tables in the huge space. The first platform was as tall as a person, and it shone with golden light from top to bottom. At the top, there was a round ball the size of a human head that emitted a dazzling golden light. The second platform was green, and on top of it was also a round ball that emitted a thick green light. The third platform was blue, and on top of it was a dazzling blue ball. The fourth platform was red, and on top of it was a dark red burning ball. The fifth platform was a magnificent bright yellow, almost transparent. On top of it, there was a round ball that shone brilliantly like the sun, resplendent and dazzling. The 5 platforms formed an equilateral pentagon. Or rather, they formed a perfect circle. June Moxie's eyes widened. Chapter 740. The essence of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. This place actually contains all the essences of the 5 elements. June Xia sucked in a breath of cold air as he looked at the 5 different colored balls. He was almost moaning. They were the essences of the 5 elements. Could this be the surprise that the 9 Nether First Young Master had prepared for him? But it didn't seem like these things could be taken away so easily. Because of the 9 Nether First Young Masters' heaven-defying methods, these essences of the 5 elements were able to balance each other in this unique room, fusing into one and creating a relatively delicate balance. If any one of them was taken away, it could cause a huge explosion when the balance of the 5 elements was lost. June Moxie quickly calmed down from his ecstasy and immediately discovered the danger within. Once the balance was lost, it would cause an explosion. There was no doubt about this. What's more, June Moxie discovered that the essences of the 5 elements were all connected to the center of the earth. Once the essences of the 5 elements exploded, even the most conservative estimate would be that this entire mountain would be blown into the sky. This palace would naturally disappear without a trace. Even June Moxie himself would not be left with a corpse. With the strangeness of this place, even the yin-yang escape that could hide in the void might not be able to avoid it. June Moxie circled around the essences of the 5 elements and sighed deeply. My dear, are you giving me a surprise? Or is it a shock? Or are you preparing to let me transmigrate again? The only choice was to absorb the essences of the 5 elements at once. But to do that, he had to circulate the power of the 5 elements at the same time. This was undoubtedly an extremely difficult challenge for the current June Moxie. Before this, not to mention circulating the power of the 5 elements at the same time, he had never even tried to use 3 of them at the same time. The most powerful time was when he circulated the power of earth and water at the same time under the sword peak. To circulate the power of the 5 elements at the same time, the most important thing was to multitask. To an ordinary person, multitasking was already too much. Forcing it would only result in the failure of both. But now, June Moxie was actually forced to do 5 things at the same time. He was speechless. This first young master of the 9 underworlds had definitely set up this place on purpose. In such a huge hall, which part of the north, south, east, west and west couldn't contain the essence of the 5 elements? Why did they have to gather in such a stone chamber? This was equivalent to opening the safety valve of tens of millions of atomic bombs, and then gathering them all in one room, and actually living in peace for more than 10,000 years. The people from the Silver Blizzard City were really awesome. He actually chose to build a city on such a precious land. Furthermore, he'd lived happily for so many years, ruling over the 9 Nether First Young Master. At this moment, June Moxie not only felt indignation towards the 9 Nether First Young Master, but also admiration towards the ancestors of Blizzard Silver City. He could ascend to the heavens at any time. June Moxie recalled the collapse of the Sword Peak and the snow mountain that he had just finished. He could not help but cramp his legs. That tremor actually didn't cause this place to explode. How lucky! If the tremor had caused this place to explode, not to mention the Blizzard Silver City on the surface, even he, as well as Mei Shuiyan, Jun Wui, and the rest who were currently flying up the snow mountain, would have to take a plane. Who knows, they might even have to go through a whole transmigration. I fucking give up. You can be so devious to this extent, you're really a weirdo. You're ruthless. You're really ruthless. June Moxie roared at the sky. He was so angry that he was like a tiger that had suddenly been locked in a cage. Panting heavily, June Moxie's eyes suddenly turned red. At this moment, he hardened his heart and scolded, "Isn't it just circulating the power of the 5 elements at the same time? I'll fight you. If I can't even get past this, how can I ride on your crotch in the future? You still want to slap my butt? Just you wait." In a flash, June Moxie entered the center of the circle. He sat down cross-legged and used his entire heart, mind, spirit, and soul to circulate the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. After 9 circulations, June Moxie's mind became clear. The absorption process this time could only be summed up in 6 words: succeed or die trying. These 6 words were used in this situation, and it was very realistic. If the absorption was not successful or the balance was lost, then not only would the entire snow mountain vanish into thin air, June Moxie himself would also not be spared. His body would directly turn into ashes, and he would die without a burial. But if he really succeeded in absorbing such a huge amount of 5 elements essence in one go, the 5 elements power accumulated in his body would definitely rise to the peak like a rocket. It would directly reach the realm of great accomplishment. Because the power of the 5 elements maintained a balance, it meant that all the 5 elements were at the same level. As long as one could successfully absorb it into the body, it would automatically form a cycle of the 5 elements, and there would be no such thing as not being able to withstand it. If one of the 5 elements was absorbed, the power would be too great, and it would definitely cause an imbalance in the internal organs of the human body. That would be unimaginable. In June Moxie's heart, the basic cultivation method of the power of the 5 elements slowly appeared. Bit by bit, it slid through his heart, clear and pure, without a speck of dust. At this moment the entire world was not in his heart. The 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. They corresponded to the 5 internal organs of the human body. Metal was the lungs, wood was the liver, water was the kidney, fire was the heart, and earth was the spleen. These were the 5 internal organs. But that was not all. There was also a connection between the 6 organs. Metal was the large intestine, wood was the gallbladder, water was the bladder, fire was the small intestine, and earth was the stomach. Other than that, the 5 elements corresponded to the 5 emotions of anger, joy, longing, sorrow, and fear. The eyes, tongue, mouth, nose, ears, and head also corresponded to the tendons, meridians, flesh, bones, and fur of the human body. In other words, if Jun Moxie wanted to absorb the essence of the 5 elements at the same time, he would need to mobilize every part of his body and coordinate with the energy of the different elements. This matter seemed very simple, but in fact, it was an extremely complicated and huge project. No matter where there was the slightest mistake, all the previous efforts would go to waste. So when Jun Moxie discovered the 9 Nether First Young Master's intentions, he was so exasperated. What a hysterical scene. But perhaps this was the so-called being forced to the point of no return. At this stage, there was no choice left for him. So, there was only one thing left: succeed or die trying. This young master is going all out with you. I'm going to throw caution to the wind today. Jun Moxie made himself completely and thoroughly calm down. After he had completely calmed down, he carefully adjusted his breathing and relaxed his entire body, allowing his entire body to be in a state of absolute balance. His head, limbs, and torso were completely relaxed and balanced. In his current state, even if he was placed on the surface of the water, without using any martial arts, he would still be able to float on the water in absolute balance. Then, he took a deep breath, and in the void of his thoughts, he brazenly took the lead in activating the power of metal. Once the power of gold was activated, the ball of gold essence instantly glowed brightly. But just as the light flashed, the power of wood was also activated, followed by the power of water, fire, and earth. The power of the 5 elements was fully activated and circulated in Jun Moxie's body according to their fixed meridians. After one round of circulation, the power of 5 elements reached the starting point at the same time, which was also the end point. The first experiment was a success. But this was only circulating at the same time, it did not start absorbing at the same time. Jun Moxie exhaled slowly again. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune boiled as he exhaled, causing the power of the 5 elements to circulate at the same time. Following the fixed route, it began to circulate round after round. Come! After the power of the 5 elements had circulated 25 times, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune completely calmed down. Only the power of the 5 elements continued to circulate in his meridians. With a shout, the 5 elements' essence around his body simultaneously shot out a thin ray of light, shooting into Jun Moxie's body. It merged into his meridians. The golden light entered the circle of the power of gold, the green light entered the circle of the power of wood, the blue light entered the circle of the power of water, the red light entered the circle of the power of fire, and the yellow light perfectly fused with the power of earth. The 5 elements' essence had officially begun to be absorbed. From this moment onwards, Jun Moxie began to walk on a tightrope in the middle of a snowstorm on top of a lofty cliff. It could be said that this description was not the slightest bit exaggerated. In fact, it was far from enough to describe the risks involved. If one failed to walk on a tightrope on top of a cliff, then only one person would fall to his death. But if one failed here, then the entire mountain would be gone, and there were many people on the mountain. All sorts of light rays, like strands of hair, slowly entered Jun Moxie's body. This stone room was like the neon lights of a nightclub, all sorts of light misty and beautiful. Jun Moxie slightly closed his eyes, his mind as tranquil as water. He was so quiet that he was almost instinctively controlling the power of the 5 elements to circulate in his body. At this moment, there was no success or failure in his heart, nothing at all. His mind was empty, but it was a true and objective reflection of every bit of the five elements' essence that was being absorbed. Time slowly slipped away. In the blink of an eye, 2 days and 2 nights had passed. In these 2 days and 2 nights, Jun Moxie's posture did not change at all, it was still the same. Even his breathing was slow compared to the beginning. It had been like this since 2 days ago. Until now, there was still no change at all. But Jun Moxie's body had been soaked with sweat, and then evaporated by his body temperature, dried, and then soaked again. His hair had also been soaked into strands by his sweat. The amount of mental strength that had been consumed in these 2 days and 2 nights was undoubtedly unprecedented and unimaginable. If it wasn't for Jun Imosie's incredible endurance, even if it was another Saint King level expert doing the same job, they would probably have collapsed from the pressure long ago. The light rays that were absorbed into Jun Moxie's body had gradually changed from the thickness of a strand of hair to the thickness of a weed. And the five elements' essence had also disappeared by 1/3. And at this moment, the light rays became thicker again, becoming as thick as a chopstick, and the speed of absorption increased again. The light rays shone brightly. A close friend of mine is getting married tomorrow, but he went down today to inform me that the original groomsman had fallen down and was crippled. He wants me to be the groomsman tomorrow. He has to set off at 4 in the morning, which means that I have to be at his house at 3:30. I'm very depressed. Even if I'm going to be the groomsman, I'm going to be a substitute. Sigh, that's true, he really can't find anyone more handsome than me. Speaking of which, I'm not going to pass on this responsibility to others. Well, that's why there are 2 more days today. Tomorrow's update will be later. I'm going to be the groomsman tomorrow. I'm currently fantasizing whether the bridesmaid is pretty or not. I'm drooling. When I mentioned this in the group, Imprint actually said emotionally, Feng Ling is going to hook up with other people's brides again. Pooh! Am I that kind of person? Chapter 741. This proved that the power of the 5 elements in Jun Moxie's body was not far from the total amount of the 5 elements' essence outside. If he managed to gain an overwhelming advantage, then it would be considered a great success. Another day passed by, and Jun Imosie was still as calm as before. However, his face had regained some of its calmness. This was undoubtedly an extremely good sign. Jun Dashao exhaled a long breath. The chopstick-thick 5-colored light around his body suddenly sped up, crazily pouring into his body like a meteor. After several days and nights of energy transmission, the 5 different colored balls had been absorbed until they were only the size of a fist. Under this round of strengthened suction, they shrunk at an astonishing speed, until they completely disappeared. Then, the different colored supports below suddenly blossomed with a dazzling light, as dazzling as the sun. After a flash, the extreme light disappeared, and the entire stone chamber was plunged into darkness. It was like the polar night. Jun Moxie, who had successfully completed the technique, looked up to the sky and let out a long roar. He slowly stood up, and the bones all over his body made a series of crackling sounds, like countless broad beans exploding on a red-hot iron wok, one by one, dense and frequent. His long hair also abruptly rose, each strand standing upright on top of his head, forming an extremely strange phenomenon. It was similar to the situation of a human's hair standing upright after being electrocuted. And this strange scene was far from over. His long hair abruptly stood upright, and in the next moment, it changed into a dark gold color, then a red gold color, and finally a brilliant gold color. In the next moment, the gold color was gone, transforming into a dark green, and then gradually changing into a dark green, and then gradually changing into a dark blue, sky blue, red, earthy yellow, bright yellow, and so on. Finally, after the upright hair had transformed into a light yellow color, it finally floated down. The moment it fell back onto his shoulders, the color of his hair had already returned to its original color. Black as the night. The absorption of the power of the 5 elements could be considered a real success. Jun Moxie finally opened his eyes. His eyes revealed a trace of fear that came from the bottom of his heart. This process seemed calm and smooth, but in fact, it was extremely demanding on one's mental control. Multitasking. A little carelessness, a little flaw, and he would immediately be consigned to eternal damnation. Once there was any obstruction in any aspect of the five elements' absorption, dispersion, movement, and integration, everything would be over in an instant. Therefore, in these 3 days and 3 nights, Jun Moxi's nerves had been stretched taut, and he did not dare to relax at all. Until now, he could truly let out a long breath, and also a sigh of relief. The seemingly safe process was definitely more thrilling than fighting a few venerables and saints. Jun Moxi focused on his inner vision, inspecting the rewards of this adventure. Using his mind's eye, he observed the different colored flows of energy mixed with the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, converging into a multicolored ball in his dantian. At this moment, Jun Moxi could finally confirm that he had, in the end, completed this seemingly impossible task perfectly. And in the next moment, Jun Moxi could clearly feel that his entire body was indescribably tired, and every joint was aching. Every muscle in his body was aching. It was extremely difficult for him to even move his little finger. At this moment, if someone were to barge in, they did not need to be a strong expert. As long as they could wield a saber, they would be able to deal with Jun Dashao. These 3 days were really not easy. Whether it was physical strength, mental strength, or spiritual energy, they were all exhausted to the extreme. The weary Jun Moxi knew that this was not the time to rest, and he forcefully circulated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to restore his strength. He did not forget that out of the 7 passages, he had only seen 2. There were still 5 more, and he did not know if there would be an even greater surprise. In fact, even if the remaining 5 passages were only for show, Jun Dashao would not be too disappointed. After all, the surprise this time was really too great. The power of the 5 elements could be considered to have been completely satiated, and all that was left was to use the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to slowly refine the essence of the 5 elements in his body. After all, the essence had already been transferred into his body, so it was not a big deal. It was only a matter of time. After circulating his energy for 81 times, Jun Dashao's physical strength was greatly restored, and he floated out of the stone chamber like a floating cloud. When he left, there was a trace of a smile on his lips, and he turned back meaningfully, waved his sleeves, and returned to the main hall in the center. In the empty stone chamber behind him, a wisp of divine sense that was hidden suddenly disappeared, drifting into the air. From this moment onwards, this huge stone chamber could finally be considered as an ownerless object. Although the 9 Nether First Young Master had left behind this test, he was ultimately still worried, and left behind a wisp of divine sense to protect him. Everything has its own variables, and if there were any accidents, he could still lend a helping hand. A good opponent like Jun Moxi was ultimately hard to come by, and it would be a pity if he died here. But Jun Moxi had not used this last safeguard from the start, so when Jun Moxi exited the stone chamber, this wisp of divine sense automatically dissipated. From an unknown distance away, a handsome young man surrounded by countless beautiful young ladies was watching with a smile on his face. Suddenly, he was stunned, and he shook his head with a smile. Good lad. His expression was actually filled with admiration. According to Jun Moxi's estimation, the 3rd stone chamber should be the largest of all the stone chambers. It was even bigger than the main hall in the center. There was no end to it. This place seemed to be connected to another space. There were mountains of elixirs here. No, using pile to describe it was not appropriate. Because these elixirs were all luxuriant, and they all grew on the ground. There were so many types of elixirs here, and the quantity was so huge that even the experienced Jun Dashao was flabbergasted. The age of the elixirs here was self-evident. Because this stone chamber was actually connected to the earth chi. In other words, these fellows had been growing in this stone chamber for a long time. Disregarding the age of the elixirs before this, just the age of the elixirs in this stone chamber was at least 10,000 years, and this was already the most conservative estimate, and how could the elixirs collected by the 9 Nether First Young Master be ordinary? All the elixirs in this world had a lifespan. Take ginseng for example. It might exist if it was 1,000 years old, but once it exceeded the age of 1,000 years, ordinary varieties of ginseng would automatically dissipate, turning into heaven and earth spiritual qi and dissipating into the world. Lingji, cinnabar fruit, snow lotus, fleeceflower, and many other elixirs were the same. But in this stone chamber, this restriction was broken. There was no limit to the age of the elixirs. Because Jun Mo Xia had finally discovered that the bottom of this stone chamber was not soil, nor was it stone walls, nor was it Xian ice. It was all that warm and soft jade layer that made his eyes feel hot just by looking at it. It was actually the entire place. Jun Moxie finally understood where that warm jade bed came from, so this entire place was filled with this stuff. No wonder that guy was so generous, emptying out the warm jade core silk. It turned out that there was actually an inexhaustible amount of it here. No wonder those spirit herbs didn't wither or dissipate. Under the nourishment of this warm and soft jade layer, the enormous amount of spirit energy would circulate at any moment, and then seal it within the spirit herb's body, accumulating into its own medicinal strength. Not to mention 10,000 years, it was believed that even after another 100,000 years, or even 1,000,000 years, these spirit herbs would only continue to grow here, and no accidents would happen. Jun Moxie was genuinely worried. These elixirs were undoubtedly precious, and all of them were over 10,000 years old. But this was also the disadvantage of these elixirs. Once they were removed, if they were not used as soon as possible, they would turn into nothingness in an extremely short period of time. And the amount of these elixirs was so huge. How was he going to bring them away? The Hongjun Pagoda was on strike, and he needed to carry them? Then even the 9 Nether First Young Master would be able to crush that fellow, but it didn't seem appropriate to stay here. Who knew when he would be able to come again? Besides, who knew what the 9 Nether First Young Master was planning? What if this place was closed the moment he stepped out? Wouldn't he die of regret then? There were so many elixirs here, and any one of them was a type that he could not digest at the moment. Even if it was a normal Lingji, Jun Moxie estimated that it was at least 10 to 20,000 years old. If he really ate it now, his small body would probably explode immediately. The other option was to directly use it to refine pills. But there was no need for such high-grade elixirs at this stage. If he forced himself to use it, it would be a waste of resources. The key was that he did not dare to use it. Once a large amount of spiritual qi leaked out from refining the elixirs, it would be quite dangerous. It was really too tempting. Jun Moxie roughly estimated that the elixirs here could basically be used to refine pills for the 5th to 8th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. If he really put it into the Hongjun Pagoda and carried it with him, it would save him a lot of effort. Just at this time, Jun Mo Xia suddenly felt dizzy, and the Hongjun Pagoda rose up with a boom. Following that, it turned into a shadow and came out from between Jun Mo Xia's eyebrows. It landed in front of Jun Mo Xia. The pagoda was only the size of a pinky finger. It slowly rotated, and exuded a magnificent light. Then, it slowly grew until it was as tall as a person. Then, it entered the 4th stone room with a schwat sound. Jun Moxie was instantly shocked. Ever since he entered this hall, there had been no movement from the Hongjun Pagoda. Jun Moxie was wondering why this fellow insisted on entering, but there was no movement after he entered. Even if he had eaten too much and hadn't digested it, it shouldn't be like this. Who would have thought that the moment there was movement, it would directly run out from his sea of consciousness? Jun Moxie hurriedly followed. When he arrived at the 4th stone chamber, he was instantly shocked. In the middle of the stone chamber, there was an indistinct object floating in midair. Its entire body was emitting a blazing white light. When the white light reached a radius of 10 feet, it suddenly turned into a 7-colored light and slowly rotated without stopping. The Hongjun Pagoda gracefully floated in the air, gradually approaching this object. However, that sense of urgency was not concealed at all. This kind of feeling was reflected in Jun Moxie's heart. It was like a mother suddenly finding her long-lost son. It was like a pair of twin brothers quietly reuniting after being separated for tens of years on a street filled with the flames of war. With a pa sound, the light of the Hongjun Pagoda and the light of the Hongjun Pagoda fused together. Then, it let out a cry of joy and surprise, like a child rushing into his mother's embrace. In a flash, it arrived above the Hongjun Pagoda. Then, it slowly descended and turned into a multicolored round pearl. It was perfectly embedded at the top of the Hongjun Pagoda. The aura of the Hongjun Pagoda changed in an instant. It became long and desolate. It was as if the entire world had been reincarnated in this instant. At this moment, Jun Moxie could clearly feel that the aura of the Hongjun Pagoda had suddenly become 1,000 times stronger. Although the appearance of the Hongjun Pagoda did not change much, Jun Moxie could clearly feel that the current Hongjun Pagoda was the true Hongjun Pagoda. It was also the complete Hongjun Pagoda. The Hongjun Pagoda slowly floated back and once again returned to the space between Jun Moxie's eyebrows. It rapidly shrunk. Then, it pierced through the space between Jun Moxie's eyebrows and returned to Jun Moxie's sea of consciousness. Then, the door of the pagoda opened wide. Spiritual chi gushed out as if it was celebrating. Jun Moxie felt that his entire body was extremely comfortable. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He finally understood. Why did the Nine Nether First Young Master say that he wanted to give me a surprise? So that surprise was not the 5 elements essence, nor the treasured clothes, nor the elixirs from before. The real surprise he gave her was this bead. This pearl that originally belonged to the Hongjun Pagoda. This was the real surprise. Jun Moxie finally understood. His transmigration was undoubtedly due to the Hongjun Pagoda. But Jun Moxie firmly believed that this was not the only space he could transmigrate to. From the Nine Nether First Young Master's message, there were definitely too many civilizations in this universe. But why did he transmigrate to this place? Everything was because of this bead. Only the mutual attraction between the Hongjun Pagoda and this pearl had caused him to transmigrate. It could even be said that if it wasn't for this pearl, the him back then would have died directly. He would have truly reincarnated like a normal person. But why would this pearl appear here? Jun Moxie thought about it and came up with a more plausible reason. The Nine Nether First Young Master had said that he had suffered a great loss on Earth and met with an accident, so he hurried back. It could even be said that he had escaped back. And the thing that had caused him to suffer a great loss was obviously the Hongjun Pagoda. And it was the Hongjun Pagoda in its strongest state at that time, in the hands of old ancestor Hongjun. But although the Nine Nether First Young Master had suffered a great loss at that time, he had also broken the Hongjun Pagoda into 2 in his final strike. And he, for some unknown reason, snatched this pearl and ran away. Jun Moxie finally understood. He couldn't help but sigh and lament. As the saying goes, everything is predetermined. So that's why. He was still wondering why old ancestor Hongjun didn't take away a treasure like the Hongjun Pagoda when he achieved the Great Tao. Instead, he left it in Kunlun Mountain. Why would such a powerful treasure fall into the hands of a foreigner? And why would such a magical treasure fall into his hands? All the reasons were revealed at this moment. It must be because of the battle with the Nine Nether First Young Master. That's why there were so many karma after that. This kind of heaven and earth spiritual treasure had its own fate. So, at the moment when the body of the pagoda separated from the pearl, no matter how reluctant Hongjun old ancestor was, he had to let the Hongjun Pagoda guard its own opportunity. So, 2,000 years later, there was the transmigration of the evil monarch. The new owner of the Hongjun Pagoda. And this number 1 spiritual treasure of the primitive world was finally able to be complete again in this world. The person who benefited the most was undoubtedly Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao. This was really a lucky turn of events, directly rising to the heavens. Moreover, it was truly a meteoric rise, even reaching the heavens in a single bound. Jun Moxie's thoughts spun quickly, and in an instant, he had completely figured out the cause and effect of the entire matter. Towards the vast and boundless sky above his head, he felt a sense of reverence. The will of the heavens was unpredictable. Indeed so. He suddenly recalled the words of the nine nether first young master, "I finally understand the meaning of heaven." June Moxie couldn't help but laugh in his heart. You're not the only one who understood it. This young master has also understood a little bit now. June Moxie brought the restored Hongjun pagoda back to the stone room with the herbs. Right now, he had a feeling of Han-san, am back again. Pointing at the many elixirs, June Moxie tossed his hair and said with an insufferably arrogant tone, "Collect for me." Bang! A loud sound suddenly rang out, and a crater appeared in front of June Moxie. Not only the elixirs, but even the soft jade layer had completely disappeared. June Dashao jumped in shock. This was too domineering, it was even sharper than a swarm of locusts. He hurriedly sent his divine sense into the Hongjun pagoda to take a look. At the second level of the Hongjun pagoda, an extremely vast space had been opened up. The large patch of elixirs and the soft jade layer were quietly sitting there, enveloped in a milky white spiritual qi. Compared to the qi of the earth, the vast amount of heaven and earth spiritual qi was naturally superior, and more beneficial to nourish the elixirs. June Dashao rubbed his scalp and mumbled, "What kind of explanation is this? When you can't collect, you can't even get a single straw in. But now, you've even scraped the ground. Saying that it's a swarm of locusts is light, it's like the sky is 3 feet high. No, the sky is 10 feet high. It's too much, but I like it." Following a series of arrogant shouts of "Collect for me." This kind of arrogant, petty, and nouveau riche yelled. In an instant, the entire hall was cleaned up, leaving behind only a complete mess. The treasures that the nine nether first young master had collected and stored for tens of thousands of years were plundered clean by June Dashao in the blink of an eye. After he finished plundering, June Dashao wanted to leave immediately. After all, there were still important matters at home that he needed to settle. But as he paced around, he kept feeling that he seemed to have overlooked something. What exactly did he overlook? June Dashao was very puzzled. He had clearly plundered everything here once, and there was nothing left. But there was a thought that lingered in his mind, and he couldn't get rid of it. But he couldn't grasp what it was exactly. How could it be like this? Finally, after another round, June Moxie looked at the potholes on the ground and began to ponder. A flash of inspiration. In the same hall, why was there only a soft jade layer here? But not elsewhere? Could it be that there was something strange about this place? June Moxie rubbed his chin, his eyes flashing. With this thought in mind, he naturally had to give it a try. The next moment, he had already appeared on the empty ground, looking around. He felt that the density of spiritual qi in this place was getting more and more abnormal. Then, June Dashao's eyes turned, and with a swoosh, he activated the power of earth with the yin-yang escape. Without a sound, he descended rapidly into the ground. Practice was always the most effective way to verify something. Bam! June Moxie's head smashed into an extremely hard rock that was neither gold nor jade. A huge bump appeared on his forehead at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fuck! June Moxie felt a wave of dizziness. This was the first time he'd hit a wall since learning the yin-yang escape. In the past, he'd only been obstructed at most. But this time, he'd actually been smashed into this state. If his family knew about this, wouldn't they laugh till their stomachs hurt? He absolutely couldn't let anyone know, even if he was beaten to death. This piece of ground was extremely soft on top, but it was so hard underneath. How could it be so strange? June Moxie clutched his forehead and stood up. Just as he was about to curse and vent the anger in his chest, his eyes suddenly widened, and he cried out as if he'd discovered a new continent. Fuck! Soul-replenishing jade. It's actually such a huge piece. Whoa. In front of him was a huge piece of jade that was about 3 zhang wide and 400 to 500 zhang long. It emitted a sparkling radiance. Soul-replenishing jade. June Moxie didn't dare to believe his own eyes. He carefully looked at the two pieces in the Hongjun pagoda. then looked at the huge piece that was the size of a small mountain. After rubbing his eyes a few times, he finally confirmed that this was the soul-replenishing jade. Oh my god, the Shao family only had 2 pieces the size of a finger, and they were already treated as family heirlooms. Furthermore, they even had such a miraculous function, but there was actually a mountain here. Oh my god. The drool at the corner of Jun Dashao's mouth hung all the way to his chest. I've struck it rich. I've really struck it big this time. Forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart, he activated the power of the Hongjun Pagoda again. As if he was fishing, he pulled out this huge piece of soul-replenishing jade from the ground. Jun Moxie drooled as he slowly caressed it, like a pervert caressing the thighs of a beauty. Too beautiful. Too beautiful. Especially in the middle, there's even a 7-colored radiance shining continuously. Looks like this soul-replenishing jade is definitely much better than the ones from the Shao family. Jun Moxie mumbled to himself. Pressing his face lightly against it, he felt a refreshing and comfortable feeling. It was as if the moment this piece of soul-replenishing jade touched his face, it had turned into the most gentle hot spring water, enveloping his entire body and soul within, slowly rippling. An inexplicable consciousness entered his mind from the Hongjun Pagoda like lightning. In the blink of an eye, a few words appeared in Jun Moxie's mind: Heaven and Earth Spirit Vein. Spiritual Stone Immortal Milk. No wonder the 9 Nether First Young Master said that there was a hidden spirit vein here. Jun Moxie jumped up in ecstasy. As for the Spiritual Stone Immortal Milk, it could be said to be the #1 treasure in the world. Reviving flesh and bones from the dead was only the most basic ability. Just 1 drop was enough to let a person soar from the initial stage of Silver Xian all the way to the Supreme Realm. Of course, the prerequisite was that it didn't explode. And such a huge spirit vein, how many drops would there be in it? If it was used to concoct pills, then, Jun Mo Xia felt an inexplicable wave of dizziness. He felt as if he could no longer endure such unimaginable ecstasy. His heart had already reached a state of severe hypoxia. He fell down, and his 2 legs unconsciously kicked out in a classic spasmodic posture. He almost fainted for real. After a long time, he finally stood up again and said carefully, "Keep." This time, he didn't have the arrogance of a nouveau riche from before. There was even a hint of flattery in his voice. The huge soul-replenishing jade was instantly kept into the 4th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. Then, Jun Moxie heaved a sigh of relief and looked around. This bed, this young master will also kindly accept it. And these night illumination pearls, you don't have to care about them. This young master still likes them, so I won't stand on ceremony. Anyway, you're leaving them for me, right? However, one mustn't be too ruthless. Losing the spirit vein would have a rather serious impact on the upper echelons. The reason why Han Feng Shui had that kind of energy that attracted the Hongjun Pagoda was probably because of this. Moreover, Blizzard's Silver City was now in-laws. It wouldn't be good to be too ruthless. Jun Moxie hesitated for a while, then gritted his teeth and hardened his heart. With a pained expression, he cut off a 1-meter-wide piece from the edge and put it back in its original position. I didn't remove the root. Who knows, in another 10,000 years, when this young master comes here, there will be another spirit vein. Ha ha ha. After confirming that everything was packed up, Jun Moxie disappeared in a flash. All that was left was a hall riddled with holes. This scene was even more tragic than when the Japanese entered the village. Jun Dashao thought wickedly that if the 9 Nether First Young Master were to come back and see this scene, he would probably vomit 3 liters of blood on the spot. There was nothing cleaner than this. That would be really delightful. Jun Moxie didn't know if the 9 Nether First Young Master would vomit blood when he came back, but the other person who was about to vomit blood had already started. Just as Jun Dashao put away all the spirit veins, above his head, in a stone chamber, Han Feng Shui, the lord of the Silver Blizzard City, was sitting on a lotus platform in the middle of the room, cultivating. Countless streams of spiritual qi had gathered to form a dense glossy mist, which was being injected into the lotus platform Han Feng Shui was sitting on. Suddenly, the light of the surrounding spiritual energy weakened. Han Fengshui noticed it immediately and stared at it in shock. Suddenly, his face turned pale with fright. The spiritual energy had weakened by more than 90% in an instant. What on earth was going on? Old City Lord Han felt like his heart was being fried. He stared at all of this with his mouth agape, feeling his heart slowly sinking into the abyss, chilling to the bone. This was originally a place that the Nine Nether First Young Master had created out of boredom. Although the spiritual energy from the spirit vein was relatively weak, it was still much stronger than in other places. This was why it could create such a miraculous effect, and also why Blizzard Silver City had been glorious for hundreds of years. But now, the spirit vein had all been taken away by Jun Dashao. How could the amazing effect of training be maintained? Naturally, the effect of the spiritual energy would be greatly reduced. Although it was still stronger than other places, it didn't seem to be much stronger. Only after a long period of nourishment would it return to its original state, but old Master Han Fengshui was destined not to be able to wait that long. Returning to the surface, young Master Jun naturally knew how to lie after dealing with Xue Shuangqing's questioning. His face did not turn red, and he did not even pant as he came up with a flawless excuse to fool her. But in his heart, he was secretly sweating. This Madame Han, why is she like my mother, so long-winded? With everything settled, he immediately called out the Eagle King and hurriedly bid farewell to the people of Blizzard Silver City. The Eagle King let out a long cry and spread its wings to soar into the sky, carrying Jun Dashao, who had just returned from a rewarding journey. Like a meteor, they pierced through the clouds and flew tens of thousands of miles straight to Tianxiang. At this moment, the Jun family of Tianxiang City had reached a moment of life and death. A saint was a saint after all. After a few days of probing and provocation with no results, he finally became suspicious. What kind of strong person would have such a good temper? Allowing the provocation and not making a sound? What was the difference between that and a tortoise hiding in its shell? In this world, all strong people would have their own temper and pride. If they did not have any temper, how could they become strong? The perseverance, and faith of the strong were the most admirable. Only with all these qualities could one stand out from the masses and become a unique existence. Some good people would either spend their lives like ants or disappear from the world, unable to cause any waves. Even the great scholars did not live for more than 100 years. Only those who were outstanding and did not submit to the arrangements of fate, using a spirit of defying the heavens to resist, and then enduring endless pain, depression, and loneliness, would become strong. What was the purpose of becoming strong? It was to roam proudly in the world, not being restrained by anyone, not being bullied by anyone. The strong had always wanted freedom. Self-respect. Self-improvement. How could such a person allow others to provoke him and not retaliate? Not even the slightest response. On the second day of probing, Qi Tianfeng and the rest finally became suspicious. At this time, a piece of news came like a bolt out of the blue, disrupting their state of mind. The Holy Lands sent a messenger pigeon. The 9 venerables who went to Blizzard Silver City, including Imo Xiaoyao and the other level 4 venerables, a total of 580 experts, have all perished. At the same time, the Sword Peak had collapsed. This news shocked the 9 saints to the point that their faces turned pale. With such a strong force, even if they could not win, it should not be a problem for them to escape, right? But in such a short period of time, such a shocking piece of news had arrived. Completely annihilated. Then, what level had the strength of the Jun family, or rather, Tianfa, reached? While they were still thinking about this question, they saw the answer. Dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky, blocking out the sun. One after another, level 9 peak flying Xian beasts descended upon the Jun family with an air of triumph and arrogance. The Hermitage Saint, Chen Chong, felt the overwhelming aura. His eyes slowly narrowed, and 2 rays of cold light flashed in them. Are they back? You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.